the thrill of an extra spin, and the pure joy of a jackpot. It's all your favorite games at your fingertips. Plus, get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. You play for fun, you love to win. You bet. Bet Parks.
Must be 21 in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, or Maryland. Gambling problem? 1-800-GAMBLER.
Your home for Villanova basketball is WDAS and WD273D. Fox Sports Radio, Philadelphia.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Time to get ready for the day's action. From the sides to the totals and everything in between, nobody does it better than the Tough Cover with Mark Henry, right here on The Gambler.
Look in my eyes, what do you see? The cult of personality. I know your anger, I know your dreams. I've been everything you wanna be. Oh, I'm the cult of personality. Like Mussolini and Kennedy. I'm the cult of personality. The cult of personality. The cult of personality.
Hello and welcome to a dreary edition of the Tough Cover Radio Show. It is Saturday, October 21st, and we got ourselves an NLCS. We didn't want to have ourselves an NLCS, but here we are, and it's tied 2-2 with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and that's what we're going to be talking about for a lot of this show, at least at the start of it. We will get to the college football picks in the second part of the first hour, as well as NFL picks. Sean Barnard, we're letting him out of his NBA cage in the second hour. We're going to be doing NBA win totals, a little Tough Cover NBA season preview in the second hour. But we've got Nick Picone here. You can follow Nick Picone on Twitter. Always a great follow, especially after wins. After wins, Nick Picone. I can live on Nick Picone's Twitter account for hours upon a time. The I don't know how you say his name, Campanazo, the Spanish calls, the Fransky calls, all the calls that Nick puts up. And but we're not here to talk about those today, Nick, unfortunately. And you can follow, I buried the lead. You can follow Nick Picone at _Picone on Twitter. Nick, 2 losses in a row in Arizona. And I think for the first time, on this show that I'm bringing you on, and I've had you on, 4 or 5, maybe 6 times over the year. I think I'm the one that's much more negative and much more down in the dumps and even more pessimistic on this show. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I'm not there, which is probably surprising to you. I know I kind of had an epiphany, I guess, because I couldn't really explain during the regular season why that you pointed out, like I was a Negadelphian, and I was like, okay, I'm not trying to be, but like, let me think about it. Like, why do I react in certain ways that make other people view me as a negative guy when, like, if we were just like sitting at a bar, sitting on the couch, like you wouldn't really hear me, that come out of me. And I think it was more because like we're fighting with 14 other teams in the regular season. So that I think kind of trumped everything I was thinking about during the regular season. It's like, okay, now in the playoffs, we can focus on one team at a time. And even the game 2 loss to the Braves, gut punch. But, I'm a firm believer. And I'm sure this is an old adage, momentum in baseball is only as good as your next starting pitcher. So, that's probably why I don't believe in momentum game to game so much. Yeah. Last night's game, maybe it's my fault. I had all the Diamondbacks radio calls ready, but I didn't post them. I had a feeling, like I'll wait till after the game, Yeah. So maybe it's me. Maybe I should have posted them. Maybe I would have, helped Craig Kimbrell out or something. But I'm again, last night's loss didn't have anything to do with the previous loss. So that's where I'm at. I'm like, okay, tonight's game, they come out with a win. We're still probably going to sting about the back-to-back losses, but it's not going to be as bad because we're up 3-2 coming home. But yeah, that's not kind of the positive spin people want to hear, especially after the game and how terrible. Like, hey, at least it wasn't the bottom of the ninth, right? At least we had a shot to to tie the game at least. So yeah, this group never gives up, and I think that's where I'm at. Where yeah, their backs against the wall, probably the biggest adversity they faced the playoffs. Obviously, you can make an argument for Game 2 in Atlanta, but I just didn't have a feeling that would affect them, especially coming back home. But yeah, it's just one of those things where you can blame everybody. Like you can put blame on Rob Thompson, you can put blame on Craig Kimbrell, the big hitters in the lineup, Bohm, Stott, just Rojas. I know expectations shouldn't be as big for Rojas in the lineup, but hey, he had a triple yesterday, so hey, he did something. Yeah, just the bullpen usage. I understand where people are kind of in that negative feeling and thinking that if Zach Wheeler doesn't pitch like an ace tonight, we're in a bad shape. But hey, we're still locked in to come home at the very least for Game 6. So I got to take it game by game. Still, series is tied. I think we're in good shape with Wheeler and Nola coming up. Lineup's got to hit. So I'm focus on the Diamondbacks. So I guess I'm not as negative because I just think tonight's game will be completely different than the last two.
Yeah, we're gonna play real quick. We're gonna play Blame Pie, and we're gonna preview the game. I did a terrible job introing the show. Let me intro my co-host over there, Sean Barnard. I wanted to let him have a chance to chime in here on the Phils too. You could follow Sean Barnard, of course, at Sean_Bernard1. And Sean, you texted me because I was like, texting this morning. When it's funny, like I think a lot of Philadelphia radio hosts and I think a lot of people out there, not that they enjoy doing the shows after losses, but I think they work themselves up and it's like they almost get excited and they go on these rants and they plan these rants and that's fine. And I'm, side-eyeing a specific person at a specific radio station right now for a rant that was out there this morning. But I dread these shows. Like when we have these horrible losses, like the Sixers to the Celtics and, the Super Bowl, all this, like, I think I skipped the show after the Super Bowl. I dread these shows more than anybody. Sean Barnard texted me. He's not heartbroken. He's pissed off. I don't know if I've seen a pissed off Sean Barnard as a fan. Maybe the Sixers a little bit. I feel like that was a little bit more on the heartbroken side of things too. But Sean, the floor is yours. Where are you at?
Yeah, it's frustrating because two very different games with the walk-off in the ninth inning in Game 3, which that should be the heartbreaker. You're getting walked off. It feels like there isn't a worse way to lose a baseball game. And yet here we come in Game 4. And to me, that game was so much worse of a loss and so much from an emotional standpoint, from having the game in hands, from kind of like being on your timeline of a plan. Like you had the bridge to finish this game. And then if you want to play the blame game and toss around and specifically to speak why I'm pissed off and at who, number one is Craig Kimbrell is just do your job. But number two, Rob Thompson, everyone in the entire world knew that Craig Kimbrell wouldn't do his job. And I get like you kind of have to, this is the guy that got us here. This is the same guy that was an all-star closer this year. Like he's a huge reason why the Phillies are here. There's no doubt about it. But you still got to look at the situation for what it is. And there was no chance that Craig Kimbrell had these stuff. Like he looks like a different pitcher than he did earlier in the season. There were moments earlier in the year where I was bought in. There was like a vibe or an aura to Kimbrell on the mound of like, this guy's got it. That is so far gone. And I really don't know how you put him back on the mound. And I think this game specifically tonight is going to tell a lot about Rob Thompson as a manager, because I think his downfall is very much his loyalty. Like you think back to last year's postseason run, obviously coming up short in the World Series, a big reason why they came up short, and not the lone reason for sure, but he rode with Castellanos until the ship sank. Do you make that same decision this year? Do you keep sticking with these guys with the guys like Alec Boehm, who are very clearly in his head at this point, and I think that's leaking into the field right now. The bullpen decisions are going to be a huge thing tonight, and don't pull your starters so early. Don't be riding on the bullpen. I had a huge issue with it with Christopher Sanchez last night. I know he lit up a couple runs, but he did not pitch bad. Forgetting the outs was bad. That was a bad look for sure. I thought he pulled Ranger too early in game 3 as well. So for me, I think tonight I have very much had my eyes glued to Rob Thompson's decision making, and I think this is very much a legacy game for him.
I wanted to chime in real quick, and I actually, last night I was pretty upset with Topper, and I just want to say I don't think that loss was on Topper. I don't think that he managed his way out of the loss, and I know everyone's going to say we all knew what was going to happen with Kimbrel. Did we want Walker out there? Did we want Lorenzen out there? Like, I kind of think it was the only move that he had to make there. I think that there are things you can nitpick, because I thought Sanchez was pulled too early. I wish he was left in longer. I thought Strom could have been used on a bit of a wraparound. Like, he was a starter earlier this year, and they took him out pretty fast. Maybe you use him for 2 or 3 innings. I don't know if that's knowing you have to use him tonight, because he didn't pitch in game 3, so he is definitely available tonight. I thought maybe you leave Sir Anthony in for another batter or 2. They wrapped him around, and then they only left him out there for 1 pitch. He got an out. Maybe you would have left him in a little longer. The one thing that I did think was his worst decision was maybe when you put Soto in, it should have been Alvarado. Like, I think that's the time you just go for the kill. You worry about the 9th later. You hope you score some runs. And you go, all right, we're up 5-2. Let's put Soto in here, instead of then you end up having to use Kerkering in that spot. And again, I don't know who else he should have used. Maybe Lorenzen. Like, it's just at a certain point, it all comes back to taking Sanchez out so early. It's hard to have 8 bullpen guys all on their stuff. And Nick, I want to turn it to you, because I think a lot of the conversation's going to just be the bullpen stinks. The overall bullpen stinks. And I think that's the overarching take. But is it fair to say that 4/7 of the bullpen has been very good? Soto up and down. Soto's been good at times, been down at times. Hasn't really killed you at any point, but has had up and down moments of not finding the strike zone. And then Kimbrel and Kerkering have very clearly been bad. Do you think that kind of the bullpen's being painted with too broad of a brush a little bit in saying it stinks? Because you look at Sir Anthony, you look at Hoffman, Strom, Alvarado, of course, like, those guys have come through.
Yeah, I would agree that it's probably painting broad brush the whole bullpen. I remember earlier this year, I was afraid that the bullpen was being used too much, like early mid-season. And I think it threw a stat out that the Phillies weren't even leading the league, and among bullpen uses, they were like middle of the pack. Like, every team was using their bullpen a lot, and that has a lot to do, obviously, with starting openers and stuff like that. Different teams do different things with their pitching staff now. But like, my main thing, and this was a great doomsday scenario for sure. I thought, they're like, I'm in a game in June, and I'm seeing like these great relievers being used on a constant basis, almost like every day. And I'm like, I really hope this doesn't come back to bite them. To their credit, some of them, maybe that's the case with Kimbrel. You can make an argument that maybe he was used too much in the regular season, and he just, lost his stuff. But guys like Alvarado, Hoffman came out of nowhere. That's not the case for those guys. Like, they weren't overused because they're performing well in the most stressful situations you could possibly have in baseball right now. So I'm kind of like in the middle, where I just want I don't want Rob to just blindly trust these guys. And I know putting Kerkering in there, and people were like, why would you put Kerkering in that situation? The rookie walked in a run, but at the same time, you're either a dog or you're not. Like, I at this point, do you care that he's a rookie, or do you care that he's shown that he can get out of these situations, whether it be the regular season or, if he was, in earlier playoff games? He's got to get through this. But yeah, I wasn't a fan of that specifically, but that's Rob's job. Does he have a feeling that Kerkering can get out of this, or can Kimbrel get out of this? And it's really a gut feeling for him, I think. And obviously statistics play a role. Data plays a role. The good thing is we don't have to worry about Kimbrel tonight. And if they lose, that's obviously not going to be the reason they lose. You got to hit the ball too. I mean, that's a whole other discussion that I'm sure we'll touch on. But the bullpen, I don't think is the unraveling of the last 2 games. I don't think that that's fair, especially game 3. The bats just were dead the entire time. So, and the bullpen kept them in the game, the whole game. So, last night was just like a bad night. You hope that the main guys aren't tired out and they're not burnt out. But I don't see that as much as, like I feared in the middle of the season that we would see that in October. I'm still feeling relatively good about the bullpen, but you also need your starters go deep. And bringing in Hoffman in like the 3rd inning yesterday, that was probably the biggest gripe I had about Thompson's usage yesterday. But again, if you're not going to use Walker and you're not going to use Lorenzen because you plan to use them tonight, like I understand that. That's just how it is. That's just the decision he made, and we hopefully can live with it and not die with it.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too hard on Topper overall because for the most part, he's been great with all these decision makers. That he's pulled all the right strings in general. But I totally agree. The Jeff Hoffman point is one I wanted to jump on. That was my biggest issue. And Mark, I agreed with your last take, like situationally with like what are their better options. But the reason they're in that situation is because of the previous decisions of setting things up like that. And I just philosophically disagree with Topper on like the leverage conversation. And I get it. Like those were massive outs that Hoffman brought in. But you have to play 9 innings in a baseball game no matter what. And that's something that I think like I've felt like this with Topper from since he took over, of this concept of going through last year, not having a true closer, going with like the higher stakes situation, the matchups and all that thing. But like the bottom line to me is the 9th inning is always going to be a huge inning if it's a close game. Like you have to keep that in mind. And I feel like he kind of goes with the guys too early. I feel like he tries to win the game in the 5th inning sometimes, which you just can't do in baseball. And I'm curious your guys' kind of thoughts on that. And I get there's a balance to it. There's a lot to each situation in this, but I think Topper gets way too focused on like winning each inning when like we have a whole game to play no matter what.
I think a lot of that trust comes down to hoping you can maintain a lead in the early innings and blow it open, which you see in game 2. And, you only hit 3 hits off Merrill Kelly, but they're all homers and it's 3-0 for a long part of the game. The bullpen gets you through an early, they pulled Nola a little early, but not that early. I mean, I guess he went 6 innings. And then it explodes in the 6th, 7th inning around that time. And that happens a lot. I agree with playing matchups. Like I think the lefty righty thing does matter. But do I think sometimes you can get a little too locked in? And then I think sometimes he ignores it. And he's supposed to be this like matchup guy. And I think Rob Thompson's a better manager than we've had in Philadelphia in a really long time. So we're nitpicking, and it's always gonna come down to things like this. And there's going to be bad decisions. There's going to be good decisions. Last year, it felt like every decision he pulled was correct until the final one, and bringing in Alvarado for Wheeler. Now, kind of shifting to tonight and looking at the bullpen usage for tonight, because I think that's where everyone's mind's at. It's on Wheeler, and I think we all feel confident you're getting 5 from Wheeler no matter what. Like that's just a given. You're getting 5. You need 6 tonight. You need 6 tonight, and honestly, if you can get 7. That changes the entire game. But looking at the guys who are unavailable, you have to imagine it's not an elimination game. So you cannot use Alvarado tonight, in my opinion. Like, I don't want to see a guy throwing the 3rd straight night. That's just not smart baseball. We've seen it enough through the years. You don't throw a reliever 3 straight innings or 3 straight days, especially when Alvarado 2 days ago threw a lot of pitches in game 3. You obviously Kimbrel and Kirkring are off the table for multiple reasons, for 3 days and that reason. Hoffman also pitched 2 straight days. I don't really want to see Hoffman tonight, even though Hoffman's maybe the guy I trust the most. But taking those aside, that means you have Wheeler, and then the available lefties you have are Soto and Strom, and the available righties you have are Seranthony, and that's probably it, right? Like you probably have Soto, Strom, and Seranthony out of the pen. Maybe Wheeler's available. Who knows? Like maybe, or not Wheeler. I mean, my apologies. Maybe Ranger's available. They did that last year in the NLCS where they brought him in a situation like that. So maybe Ranger could be available, and then you bring him out anyway for game 7 if necessary. But what do you think is kind of the plan for Topper? Because I think, in my opinion, the plan is probably Wheeler goes 7, Strom and Sir Anthony mixed match the 8th and 9th. And then if Wheeler can't go 7, you probably bring in Soto for a lefty matchup in the 6th or 7th. That's probably the plan. And then Rangers to break glass in case of emergency. Is that, what do you think about that, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, and you also got to think if he didn't use, and I know I mentioned this earlier, Walker and Lorenzen yesterday. I feel like we're going to see them like we have to, right? Like their bullpen arms are like you just laid out 4 guys that are basically their bullpen tonight. That might not be enough. So hopefully with Wheeler on the mound, it is. But again, you can't just take it for granted. I guess us, like we can't take it for granted. Obviously, Topper knows his plan. But yeah, if you get Walker, and I know they're both righties, but that's kind of got to be. Those were the only 2 pitchers left yesterday after they used all those pitchers at the end of the. Kimbrel was in the 8th inning, and they put a list on the screen of all of the guys in the bullpen. Everyone had been used except Walker and Lorenzen. So I do think we see them if Wheeler can't go, a complete game, which would be really nice. But also got to think about, you're right. It's not an elimination game either. So even if they lose tonight, and it would suck, like, trust me, being down 3-2 and even coming home, like the game 6 and 7 being in Philly doesn't make me feel better personally. It's like they're still down 3-2 in the series, and Arizona can easily steal one. So that's where we're at right now, where if they win tonight and we see Walker and Lorenzen, I think we'll be in really good shape, headed into game 6 with the bullpen mainly. But yeah, Wheeler's probably got to pitch another game of his life to get into the 6th, 7th inning to mitigate that, hopefully the bats give him a big enough lead and give the bullpen a big enough lead. So there is margin for error that ultimately will not cost them the game. And that's the frustrating part about losing back-to-back losses, because if we were up 3-1, much less stress when it comes to bullpen, and there's probably much less stress on Zach Wheeler as well. Maybe there's much less stress on the lineup. I don't know how they go about their business, but we also know, and last night's game is not going to affect tonight's, and firm believer in that. Momentum, I understand it, and I understand why people use that. Again, there's no off day, so yeah, like playing the game right after a heartbreaking loss, you have to find a way. I think this Phillies team, we've seen, like, can they find a way? And they've found a way when their back's up against the wall. So I can't. I know there's a lot of people already counting them out. Series over. You get those back-to-back losses are as debilitating as can be. You're not going to come back from that, and I just don't subscribe to that theory. So going into this with like a clean slate, any other game, series is tied 2-2. You're not going to end your season if you lose tonight. But it would be nice to get a win, and I do think Lorenzen and Walker might be a big part of that. Whether it gives us, agita or what,
I go back and forth on the momentum thing. I think like the analytical side of my brain, obviously the analytic community doesn't think momentum's real in general, in any sport, in any situation. And I have a hard time believing that. But then there are times where I do 100% subscribe to the belief that it is just, momentum's as good as your next starting pitcher. So I really do go back and forth on it. I don't think we're going to see Walker or Lorenzen. Like, I think they were on the roster for mop-up duty. I really think that's what it was. And
maybe if it's 10-0 again, we might.
Yeah,
hopefully.
definitely. If we have a 4+ run lead, I think they would maybe bring them out. But I think they would go to that group of Soto, Strom, Sir Anthony, and then you'd have some conversation. Maybe they would use them before they would use Ranger. But I just think they would trust Ranger so much in a high leverage spot. But who knows? Rob's got a plan, and we don't know it. That was clear after last night.
And
so
listen, Ranger pitched another great gem, game 3. So they haven't hit him. I wouldn't be opposed to that either.
Greatest career postseason ERA of all time, passing Christy Mathewson and Sandy Koufax, and we wasted one of those starts, and we ruined his perfect, undefeated postseason streak. It's a shame. It's a terrible loss. We're going to be talking about that loss throughout the show. We got Nick Piccone here. We got Sean Barnard. One more question before we turn it over. So I got people yelling at me to give out my college football picks. These hyenas. But one more question before we go. I guess you answered it a little bit there when we were talking about Game 5 and we were talking about what we thought would happen. Zach Gallen is pitching on the mound for Arizona. His home stats are extremely good. He's probably one of the best pitchers in baseball at home in any stadium. And we've seen in Arizona, the humidor, the closed roof, the ball's not traveling. And that's how we beat Zach Gallen in Game 1. Where is your read on what happens with the bats tonight? Because I think I'm actually less concerned about the bats in general. I didn't think they were that bad yesterday. Obviously, there were some big at bats and big spots where we really could have had a different outcome. Stott has been really disappointing. I'm not concerned long term about the bats, or I'm not concerned in the series overall about the bats, but I do think there's a chance that Zach Gallen is a completely different pitcher than he was in Game 1. I guess what's your guys' read on the offense? I'll throw it to Sean first, actually.
Yeah, I mean, for starters, I think the fact that Zach Gallen pretty much had a stinker in Game 1 makes it more likely that he comes out to deal today, that I think he's not going to make those same mistakes twice. So I think we're going to be in it for a pitcher's duel for the start of this game. As far as the bats as a whole, Alec Boehm's been my biggest concern. I was real hard on him after Game 3. I thought they weren't even looking to pitch to Bryce because they wanted to get to Boehm, and that's an overarching concern that won't go away until he proves teams that he can hit. And my biggest issue is now I feel like he's starting to spiral a little bit. Like that overthrow to Bryce on that routine play. And for the most part, Boehm's been so good defensively, especially this postseason. But it feels like he's starting to slip a little bit. I think the best outcome for this is for sure for Boehm to walk up there and hit a nice double and kind of calm the nerves or whatever happens there. But I do think that there needs to be some shakeup. And my issue with it is, like, I was thinking about moving Castellanos behind Harper, but Castellanos looks lost up there too. He's swinging for the fences on every pitch. You can see his head turning all the way out of there. And as a whole, I guess my issue with this team is we love it when the vibes are high, how all these guys are building off each other, how we're seeing.
I disagree. I know what you're going to say. I actually hate this take. So go ahead.
I'm going to say it
a
anyway.
little disagreement. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I love it when the vibes are high, when it's spiraling. All these guys are on top of each other. All the bats are hitting. It's hitting season. But it feels like when things start to go south, that there's still this connectivity, that these guys still feed off each other's energy. And I thought last night when Schwarber hit that homer, that was going to break that, start to open things up a little bit. But it feels like there's just like a lack of energy on this team on specifically last night that isn't really there. So I need that to change. And I feel like that sometimes they stick together a little too much in that regard too.
I think that's just like, and this is not me coming after you because I understand totally that point of view. And I think that is something that gets talked about a lot with the Sixers when they win and when they lose and the attitude that they show. In my opinion, and this might just be me being like a computer, but in my opinion, I think that's just like the classic when they win, it's happy. And when we lose, we're mad. Like, I don't think that it's anything like beyond. I don't think that they're feeding off negative energy. I think they're just not doing well, and when that happens, there's less positive like happiness to see guys celebrating. Like I just think that I think it's just a results based thing, and I'm not concerned about that. But you know what, I'll go at it. I'll say it. The one Twitter account, Panasonic, whatever that Twitter account, they came after me before, but whatever. They tweeted out something about how this team has no leaders and about how this team has no one that'll go around and talk to the team and no one that'll take accountability. This team has been through more adversity than most baseball teams have to go through, and we don't have to hash out the reasons why. I think a lot of it's based in the city that they play, but taking all that aside, because this city has stepped up in such an incredible way to help the team, so it's hard to be too negative about the fan base. But I think it's absolutely, utterly disrespectful and insane to this ball club to talk about how there's a lack of leadership and a lack of accountability that has been one of the main reasons that the city of Philadelphia has connected to this team. I guess I'll throw that to you, Nick, not to get you in trouble over there, but I'll throw that to you. What's your take on people saying there's a lack of accountability, a lack of leadership? And even if you want to chime in on Sean's take.
Yeah. I will, by the way, Sean. I have someone Alec Bohm, but yeah, I mean, like I think at this point, the last 2 seasons with the same core group of guys, and then you add Trey Turner this year, to say they don't have leaders, I don't agree with that assessment. I agree with the assessment they don't have vocal leaders in the media, maybe that will come out and you know basically what do they say publicly? Like we just have to play better. That's I'm sure behind closed doors they're holding each other accountable. They're practicing. Like we've heard too many sound bites, and yeah, maybe it's lip service, but hey, sometimes we need that where these guys are working on things. They're not just lackadaisical, just doing the same things, hoping to break out of it. They're working hard, and a lot of times when you work hard, you make more mistakes. So, especially in baseball, it's a game of failure for sure. So, I do think that they have leaders in the clubhouse that do hold each other accountable, but maybe they're not the type of in your face, get your stuff together type leaders. Which some clubhouses you have that. Other clubhouses you have that where it's a tight knit group, and then somebody does that, and then you kind of falters a little bit. I think these guys being together for two years at this point, I mean, they've been to 2 NLCSs back to back. To say they don't have leaders, I just don't agree with that assessment. But I will say I would agree that maybe they're not vocal. I know Bryce even has said before, maybe not him specifically, but it's out there that he's not a vocal leader. He just comes in. He's like a lead by example type guy, and people look at that, and that's kind of like throughout my life in certain aspects. Like I've been a lead by example type guy. I'm not a guy that's gonna get in anybody's face and be like, "Come on, man, you got this." Like they know that these guys know what they have to do. So I think by that example, they certainly have leaders in the clubhouse. And to Sean's point about Alec Bohm, that throw is just like I throw my hands up in the air, but like, what could possibly be a less stressful play to make? And then you just throw it high and wide. Like he looks at the ball before he throws it. Like he grabs it and then he looks at it and then he throws it. And that, just being like a third baseman when I play baseball, like I don't like that. Like I understand it's like you got to get in a flow too. So some fielders have a flow where they field a ground ball and then throw it. So that's Bohm's flow pretty much. We see him stare at the baseball and then throw it. And obviously that just cost him Sanchez forgetting the number of outs too. This team has made so many mistakes that the Diamondbacks have taken advantage of. And, that doesn't happen all the time. Teams don't take advantage of mistakes all the time. So the fact that Arizona has, that's frustrating in and of itself because we're still making mistakes and now they're taking advantage of it. Something the Braves couldn't do. That's just the frustrating part. And then him running from second to third into an out where there was no runner on first, so he could have stayed there, forced to throw from the third baseman across the diamond. Well, I think it was Nick Castellanos' ground ball. It's like, why run into an out? Just like make them throw the ball. Whenever you make a fielder throw a ball, there's always a chance for a play like Alec Bohm to happen where he just throws it wide or something. So that's like the baseball IQ that I just want to see from this team that we don't see often enough. And that was the biggest, with Bohm, the fielding and running, obviously the bat, he came up with the bases loaded and then hit a chopper. He got bailed out by a bad throw at home. He is a big part of this lineup and this team. Now, I don't know. I don't think about Castellanos going behind Harper, but maybe Real Muto at this point. But I just don't see a lineup change happening because they've got to this point with that lineups the way it is.
I'm fine. I'm fine leaving the lineup the way it is. I would switch JT personally, but it's fine. I don't think it would make that much of a difference. But I understand the reason.
And Bohm can have a great game tonight. That's why we go to game. He could hit mash 3 homers tonight, and it'll be great.
Yeah. And we're seeing kind of like I will say, not to be like the negative Nancy, but I will say like these are the reasons why I'm not necessarily the biggest Bowman Castellanos guy, because like I'm not a big batting average Warrior fan. Like those are what those guys are. Like when you don't consistently hit for power or walk, you have to get the bat on the ball and you have to hit. So when you're having bad at bats and you're not walking and you don't have the threat of hitting for power, where it's hard to say that about Nick when we set records in that stretch, but just over a consistent time as a Philly, he hasn't been that.
Mhm.
And that, these are the stretches with Bowman, Nick, that I always get concerned about, and why I kind of excuse the Schwarber and the Bryce and even the Trey down streaks is because they're still doing productive things when they're having down streaks. But that's a separate conversation. But we'll have plenty of more Phillies conversations to have, hopefully. Hopefully, hopefully next week we're still talking about the Phillies. But Nick, thanks so much for coming on, man.
Appreciate you having me on. Phil's in 6, man. Let's get it done.
Phil's in 6. By the way, it sounds negative. I still think we're going to win the series, even if we lose tonight. How about that for a take? Arizona's not winning a game in Philadelphia. You can follow Nick Picone at _Picone on Twitter. Let's take a quick break so we can get the Hyenas, the college football card here. On the other side, football picks to finish out the first hour here on the Tough Cover Radio Show, right here on The Gambler.
Now you can relive the greatest moments from our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Streaming only on Hulu.
Lenny Kravitz kicks things off with his biggest hits.
Foo Fighters get the whole crowd singing along.
Tim McGraw debuts his new song live.
Public Enemy brings the 90s hip-hop energy.
Fall Out Boy covers a classic while literally on fire. And so much more.
Relive the greatest moments from our iHeartRadio music.
How long do we have? 2:15. Oh, cool. That's not long. Yeah, that went really long, but whatever. It's fine. I mean, it is the biggest. It's the biggest story. So yeah, I'm gonna breeze through college football. Do you have any picks in college football?
Yeah, I have 3 football.
Perfect.
That's totally fine too.
No, that's fine. Do you have any on Penn State, Ohio State? The under? Yeah, I lean that way. My best bet's Penn State. I'm all over Penn State today. I'm gonna do a reveal. I've got the Penn State shirt on. I guess I just did it to people at commercial, but yeah, the code's complaining about the Phillies. That's funny. In my DMs. What the hell? Travion Henderson's running warm-up drills right now for Ohio State. That sucks. They've been so scummy about that. They announced him out, and then they said he's gonna play, and then Ryan Day said he's a game time decision. What a fraud. I can't stand him. Yeah, I figured. Yeah, so we'll do 20 minutes here. I'm going to try to do 10 minutes college football, 10 minutes NFL. If we go long college football, my bad. We'll start the second hour with NFL if we have to, and then we'll finish the rest of it doing basketball. I have overs and unders here. I have win total. So I'm just going to read them in the order when we get to it that I have it in. And the order I have it in, I'll pitch it to you on the over under kind of. And you can tell me if you have it in a different order or whatever. Yeah, it'll be good. That'll be good stuff. We can even pod that out if you want, because that's got long longevity for the next couple days. Yeah, cool. All right. How long? Huh? That's fine. It's not a big deal. How much time do we have then? 3:20. So it's not 7 minutes. Oh, okay, cool. That's fine. Perfect. Let me copy this shit. How did you rank the East? If you're doing no, don't worry about me. I'm just talking shit. Is the commercial not playing on the stream? That's weird. Yeah, because I'm not hearing it. No.
Got 2 minutes now. I had the same issue during the show too. Those sports here, they're everywhere. I think it's a system thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Oh, they can hear me. Yeah, let me mute myself. Yeah, that's funny. Nick Picone DM me and he's like, I'm more mad about the Phillies wasting my time so I couldn't watch SmackDown. That's funny. That's great. That was good. That was really good. And that I feel like I don't have to hit on the Phillies again on the show, which is nice. All right, cool. I'll hang up.
First things first, rest in peace, Uncle Phil. For real, you the only father that I ever knew. I get my pregnant, I'ma be a better you. Prophecies that I made way back in the veil. Fulfilled. Listen, even back when we was broke, my team ill. Martin Luther King would have been on Dreamville. Talk to him. One time for my LA sisters. One time for my LA. Lame nigga can't tell the difference. One time for a who knows. Don't save her. She don't wanna be saved. 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 No.
Welcome back to the Tough Cover Radio Show. Talking college football. We're going to get over to the picks. I just tweeted them out, but here is where you get the insight on the picks. NFL will probably come at the top of the second hour. Way too much J. Cole on this show, by the way. I'm surrounded by just J. Cole stands with Sean and Jeremy on the producer. When I'm not around, they run wild with their J. Cole nonsense, with their propaganda. No, I'm joking. I used to be a fan. Born Center time. I that was my era for J.
He's the
Cole.
man.
I'm not the biggest fan, but I was a fan at one point. Forbidden Fruit. That's a jam. Let's get it over to college football, and I have to clear my throat. It doesn't even feel right to do Oh, let's get ready to gamble. It's dreary. Let's get ready
Low
to
vibes.
gamble.
Yeah, low
The
vibes.
vibes are bad. The vibes are bad. It was a bad college football Saturday for me last week too. I've kind of had a couple bad college football Saturdays, but a couple like great NFL Sundays. Been really good in the end. It's funny. I started the year red hot in college, ice cold in the NFL. That's completely switched. I'm still way up in both. If you look at let's look at the unit count here. 43, 37, and 1 at plus 25 units in college football. We are 55, 45, and 3 at plus 62 units in the NFL. So NFL has way surpassed college football thus far, even with one less week. But let's get back to our winning ways on the college football gridiron. And my best bet of the entire weekend comes right here in 14 minutes. It comes right here at noon. And let me do a little reveal. I got the zip up hoodie for the people who are watching. People know I'm not a big Penn State fan, but I do have a shirt here, and I'm repping the Nittany Lions, marking Happy Valley, Nittany Mark, whatever you want to call me. I've been all aboard Penn State all year long. They are my pick to win the national championship, and if I wouldn't take 5.5 points with them against anybody, I'd be a fraud, and that's where I'm at. And the more I look, the more I feel confident. Ohio State and Penn State rank first and second in the country defensively. There are problems with Ohio State's offense right now, and it starts with the run game. And the run game's been really banged up. Travion Henderson and Ryan Williams missed the last game against Purdue. Ryan Williams is in. Chip Trayan is in, who exited that game with an injury, but they're all banged up. The Penn State front seven as well, going against a bunch of injured running backs, is only allowing 2.1 yards per carry. That ranks top 10 in pretty much every metric. Penn State leads the country in passing success rate allowed, passing explosiveness allowed, and EPA per pass allowed. So it's not just a defense that can beat one side of the ball. They can beat you in the run game. They can beat you in the pass game. Emeka Egbuka, a first-round NFL draft pick next year, missed last game. He's missing the game tonight. Ohio State, 64th in passing explosiveness allowed. Allar's going to have to throw deep, which is something Penn State hasn't done yet. But I think that they're going to open it up just a little bit. And even with that, they've been the most efficient scoring team in the country, ranking first in finishing drives. The Nittany Lions, I know that the narrative is that James Franklin cannot win big games. And the narrative is Ohio State owns James Franklin. And I've parroted that narrative at times. But James Franklin does good relative to expectation against Ohio State. Now, what I mean by that is the Nittany Lions are 7-2 against the spread under James Franklin against Ohio State. That means they've outperformed expectations in those games. Now, they've only won one. They only won that one game. But a lot of those spreads, 10 points, 11 points, and it was a 1-point game, a field goal game, a game decided in the last minute. Now, this has got to be the closest gap in talent that James Franklin and Ohio State have ever had. In fact, Penn State might be more talented. Probably not, but it's neck and neck. I truly do believe so. And Penn State, 12-0-1 against the spread in their last 13 games. James Franklin knows the spread of this game is 5.5 points. And I believe if there's any team, if there's any defense that can handle what Ohio State's going to throw at them, it's the cornerbacks that Penn State has. It might be the best secondary in the country. Kalen King, Johnny Dixon, Cam Miller. They lead a secondary that ranks best overall nationally in on-target ball allowed and average depth of target. If anyone's going to contain their weapons, it's those guys. Penn State has the best passing defense in the nation. They allow 121 passing yards per game. Like, that is just an absurdly low number. And McCord, this is my favorite stat of this entire game. And the thing that makes me most confident in this matchup for the Penn State Nittany Lions, Kyle McCord is just 15 of 42 passing in pressure pockets. Manny Diaz blitzes on 56% of dropbacks and 39% of plays. I think Manny Diaz is bringing the house, and I don't think Kyle McCord knows how to handle the house. So I think Penn State blitzes Kyle McCord. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think it's a 17-14, 20-17 game. So that means I think that helps out the pick that Sean Barnard might have in this game.
Yeah, I'm on the under for this one. I think that's the play in this matchup. You nailed a lot of it already, that these are the number 1 and 2 defensive teams in terms of scoring and yards for the year. Some of that is inflated due to competition, obviously, and this will be the stiffest test for either team. And I do lean toward your side for Penn State. John Jansen has kind of talked me into the Penn State for this one. That for me, it comes down to, if not now, then when. That if Penn State wants to jump into this big-time program once again, this is a prime-time opportunity to do it. I also think it's a little funny. Kyle McCord is in a St. Joe's Prep guy, a Philly guy, and then Drew Aller's an Ohio guy. So kind of cool. They're a little backwards there. This is the biggest game for both these guys of their collegiate career against the stellar defense. So I do see that the game being closer to like a 17-14 kind of game is the way I see it shake it out as well. So I do think the under is the play. I do lean toward Penn State as well. And big day for football for sure. This is a statement win for either one of these teams. I believe the numbers were, if Penn State wins, their chance of the playoffs, according to the ESPN numbers, go up to 67%. And if they drop,
I would say higher.
Yeah. And I believe if they lose, it drops to 14%. And then for Ohio State, it was even higher. It was 76 and then 24 if they lose. So big stakes for this one in terms of playoffs. And this is going to be all eyes on this game, no doubt.
The winner of this game might be able to lose to Michigan and be fine. Like that's how important this game is. I mean, you might be able to get in at 11-1 with a win in this game because that's how big the win is. All three of these teams, no one's finishing worse than 10-2. So there's no way this win can't be huge at the end of the year. Like sometimes you see, for instance, Florida State beat LSU in week 1 and we all reacted like that was a top 5 matchup. If LSU loses 4 games, which they might, like it looks like that's possible, is that such a huge win anymore? I don't know. This, no matter what, will be a huge win no matter who wins it. I think it's going to be Penn State. I think this is Penn State's day. I really, really do. Let's move on. This is a game that the more that the weeks went on, I kind of like talked myself out of it. It's a 4-unit bet for me, so that's a bad thing. But I thought it was going to be a big, big bet for me. I've got Washington State plus 20.5 at Oregon for 4 units. Washington State's not as bad as they looked last week. I get it. They lost 44-6 to an Arizona team when they were an 8-point favorite. It's not a pretty loss. It's not a pretty team to back after that kind of loss. But I expect a bounce back spot if they have any heart. And I think Jake Dickert is a good coach. And a little bit of a letdown spot for Oregon. I know people are going to say it's a bounce back spot, but I think it's, they lost a really close game like that. You had the national championship picture right ahead of you and you lost. Now you have to be perfect. You can't have any mess ups. You have a big trip to Utah next week, a place that Oregon has historically struggled. Passing at the 11th highest rate in college football, Washington State still has the 20th best success rate. Even if Oregon puts up a ton of points, I do think Cam Ward, even though they got shut down last week, I don't think they're getting shut down again. Like I think they can put up points to the point where I don't think they're losing by 3 touchdowns. So I just talked myself into it a little bit while I was talking, but give me Washington State plus 20.5. I just think it's too many points. So that's one play there. I'm just going to couple these together. These are 2 ugly Big Ten West matchups that I have on my board at 3:30. Give me Wisconsin minus 2.5 at Illinois for 1 unit. I think Wisconsin's better than Illinois. It's a bounce back spot for Wisconsin after a bad loss, a letdown spot for Illinois after a big win. I don't have much to say on it. I just think Illinois is not very good. They won a big win, a game against Maryland. I don't think they're good. I think Maryland stunk in that game. They were 0-6 against the spread going into that game. I don't buy Illinois at all. I know it's a revenge game for Burt Bielema, but I don't buy it. Let me move on to the next one, another ugly one that I honestly don't have all that much on, but I have Iowa minus 3.5 against Minnesota in what is sure to be one of the ugliest games of all time.
Yeah, the over-under is at 30.5 for that one. That's absurd.
I saw it dip down to 30 this morning too. So it could end up in the 20s by the time the game time comes around. It's insane. I get it. Iowa's offense is bad, but Minnesota's quarterback is even worse. He completed just 5 passes for 52 yards last week, threw more touchdown passes to Wolverines D-backs than he did to Minnesota receivers last week. It was the 5th time in I don't know how to say his name, Kaliakmanis. I think that Kaliakmanis, 11-game career. Out of his 11-game career, it was his 5th time that he's thrown for under 100 yards. Unlike the Hawkeyes, Minnesota doesn't have a defense capable of hiding that. Minnesota ranks outside of the top 100 in rush defense and pass defense. And at least Iowa can run a little. Over the last 2 weeks, they ran for 200 yards in each of the last 2 games, while the Minnesota run defense has been getting worse and worse, giving up over 175 yards rushing in each of the last 2 games. I think Iowa runs the ball. Like, I think they win the game 13-3, and I think they have 200 yards rushing and 80 yards passing. I think that's this type of game. I kind of lean the under. But the X factor of this game, Iowa's punter. Tory Taylor, not Troy. I knew a Troy Taylor in high school. Tory Taylor, an absolute weapon. He's going to set Minnesota up consistently with awful starting field position. Last week, Taylor averaged over 50 yards a punt on 10 punts and even pinned the Badgers on their own 1 yard line twice. He is a weapon. Shout out Pat McAfee. At 6 o'clock, I like the over at 59.5. I have back-to-back money in the dumpster games here. Over 59.5, Hawaii, New Mexico for 2 units. The over is 5-1 in New Mexico games, 5-2 in Hawaii games. Take out the Oregon game because it's not fair to Hawaii. And their quarterback, Braden Schrager, has thrown for 313 plus yards in 75% of his games. Over 350 yards in half of his games. He had 427 yards last game. I expect this to be a gun'em game. Over 59.5, Hawaii, New Mexico. And then this was close to being my best bet, but I put my money where my mouth is on Penn State plus 5.5 for 8 units and Penn State money line for 2 units. But give me over 65.5 Utah State, San Jose State for 6 units. 2 of the best over teams in the country. Both teams are 6-1 to the over. Utah State has hit the last 6 overs. The last 4 times these teams have played over the last 4 years, the over has hit every single time. And Utah State has the same coach that they've had that entire run. Utah State's offense has been strong this year. It ranks 50th in success rate, 19th in explosiveness. The Aggies tend to pass more than they run the ball, which helps the over. Defensively, Utah State hasn't been able to stop anyone. Neither at San Jose State. That also helps the over. San Jose State passes the ball at the 14th highest rate in the FBS, which helps the over, but they also run the ball really well. They're like top 20 in efficiency. That also helps the over. Give me the over here. I love it. 65.5, Utah State, San Jose State. I think it's going to be like 55-50. I think it's going to be an absolute barn burner that no one's going to watch. And then at 7:30, I like Michigan minus 23.5 at Michigan State for 3 units. Michigan State is a dumpster fire. Michigan's going to take this chance to beat up on little brother. But I will say, Michigan, scumbag organization. I'm happy that their Spygate scandal is being caught. Jim Harbaugh will be in the NFL next year, 1,000,000%. You can bank on that. This is the last year he's at Michigan. I don't think it affects them this year. In fact, if anything, it'll just piss them off to go out there and beat their little brother up more. So give me Michigan, or not Michigan State. Give me Michigan minus 23.5 at Michigan State. What are your other 2 picks there, Sean?
Yeah, I wasn't on any of the same plays as you here, but I do have 2 others. I'll start out with another big game of the day. I have Tennessee plus 9. I think this is going to be a grinded out game. This is more for the fact that I just don't think Alabama is straight up capable of blowing out a team or by more than 10 points. That I don't see them winning this game by more than a possession, and 9 is just too high for me. I know that it was a statement win for Tennessee last year. I know Alabama's going to be looking for revenge. We remember them tearing down the goalpost, throwing it in the river. One of the wilder college scenes that I've seen in college football recently. I don't think we're going to have that quite the reaction in this one either way, but I do think this is going to be a grinded out game. I think neither Joe Milton nor Jalen are good enough to really put together enough of an offense. There's holes in both these quarterbacks, and they're both so like Jack and Hyde in the way that they can look so good and look so bad in the string of not a lot of time. So I think the 9's too big. I'm taking Tennessee to cover that, and I think that's just going to be a grinded out football game. My next play and my favorite of the day is the late night matchup, 10:30, Washington versus Arizona State. I have Arizona State covering the plus 26.5. Washington is the hottest team in college football right now. Michael Penix has jumped up to the Heisman favorite at minus 130, which is crazy at this point in the year. Washington also catapulted up to 5th. This is all the makings of a letdown spot for me. Now, Arizona State has not been good yet. They're 1-5, but their biggest issue has been quarterback injuries. They've had to play 4 different quarterbacks this year because of guys getting hurt. They started with a true freshman who is a high ankle sprain, was out 4 to 6 weeks, will be out for this matchup. They've tried 4 different guys, as I mentioned. This will be the first point in the season where you have the same starting quarterback for 3 consecutive games. I think they're starting to build some continuity. It is a conference matchup. I think that there's going to be a letdown from Washington. I think Arizona State's defense is good enough to at least make them work. And I think the 26.5 is too big. So I still think Washington absolutely wins, but I think they're going to be looking ahead to their bigger matchups. It's tough to come down off that emotional high after winning Oregon, which was probably the win of the season for them. So I think it just stays a little closer and probably ends like a 2-touchdown victory for Washington.
Yeah, I mean, I had some other leans that just the lines moved too much. Like, I liked the Penn State under, but I ended up staying away. I liked the Ohio State team total under, but it ended up falling farther than I thought it would. I lean Air Force minus 10.5. That's a little too high against Navy, but I do think they blow them out. And I lean the under there at 34. Like, I think Air Force wins like 20-3 there. Yeah, it's a weird week. I lean South Carolina plus 7.5 at Missouri, but I need to stop leaning towards South Carolina because they make me feel stupid every single week. I think I said that exact same thing last week. I lean North Carolina to blow Virginia out minus 23.5. I lean K-State minus 6 against TCU, but not enough to bet it. I lean the over in Colorado State UNLV at 61.5, but I didn't end up betting it. I lean Army plus 32.5 at LSU, but I didn't end up betting it. Yeah, there's a lot of leans tonight, but not a lot that I have on the card, but I do have 7 plays on the card. We're going to have to go to commercial here. I will say real quick, I'm not betting the Phillies game tonight. Public service announcement. I'm staying away. I don't have a read on it. I don't have a feel on it. I'm staying away. No props, no bets. I have enough emotional investment. I do have plus 1,400 on for them to win the NL as well, which has 2 more wins. I have plus 3,200 to win the World Series, but let's cash the 1,400 first. So let's go to break. And on the other side, we're going to talk a little NFL before we get over to the NBA and talk our 2023-2024 Tough Cover Radio Show NBA season preview right here on The Gambler.
You know when you wake up and your mouth feels gross and you just can't wait to brush your teeth to get that clean, fresh feeling again? That's exactly how
Welcome back to the Tough Cover Radio Show. That's a banger. That's a great choice. Let's talk about the NFL. Let's talk a little gridiron. We're all over the board today. 4 sports. I mean, this is the time of year, man. This is the toughest time of year. Yeah, exactly. It's a good time to be a sports fan, unless your favorite sports team blew a 4-run lead or whatever, 3-run lead last night. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of sports. Let's get it over to the NFL board. Do you have any picks for me, Sean Barnard?
I do. I have 3 as well as a player prop that I want to throw in, kind of get the ugly one out of the way, I would say, is I love the Tyreek Hill receiving yards prop this week. It's unfortunate against the Eagles, but a beat-up secondary, a guy who has only been held under 150 yards in a game, which is absurd, but he's only been held under 150 yards twice this season, which is crazy. So I do have that as my favorite player prop of the week. As far as games themselves, I have 3 picks as well. I'll lead it off with the Baltimore Ravens. I have -3 against the Detroit Lions. I think it's going to be a tough game, but to me, I like the Ravens on this. I think the Detroit Lions are playing a little bit above their heads right now, that I think it's going to regress a little bit. They've been very good, but I do question if that defense is going to be able to keep with Lamar Jackson. I think the Ravens are the grittier team. They can win in more diverse ways, and they just feel due to me. That the Lions have the 5th most passing yards, 6th most passing touchdowns, and 3rd in net yards. Their offense has been way better than I expected. I think it's going to kind of regress a little bit, and we're going to start to see them even out. And this is a chance for me to have the Ravens take the win here. You want me to rip through all 3 of them?
Yeah.
All right. I'll go next with the Washington Commanders -2 against the New York Giants. The New York Giants are a bad football team. It's time to recognize that I thought I was in on this team going into the year, but they just can't. Normally, I would say stay away from divisional matchups, that it's something weird with it. But this is the same New York Giants team that were stunned 40-0 by the Dallas Cowboys to start the season. They have been brutal. Some of these stats with the Giants are just absurd. And by the way, we're coming off back-to-back weeks in which Brian Daboll was yelling at his starting quarterback for a dumb mental mistake with not getting a plan or not being able to execute with down the stretch. The Commanders, on the other hand, have not been great, but they're getting better. That Eric Bieniemy, we're starting to see the imprints on this offense. They're a team that gets the job done. I like the Commanders to go to New York and get the job done and cover that -2 spread there. Lastly, I hate to do it. I'm flipping on this one. This was one I had earlier on the week. I originally had Dolphins. I'm back on the Birds. That I do think the Eagles are finding a way here. I was real skeptical more from a matchup standpoint, that I think this is a terrible week to have the injuries in the secondary, which the Eagles have. I really question how they're going to be able to stop this Dolphins attack, but I'm seeing all the sharp money come in on the Eagles. I'm kind of been talking into it. It feels like a bounce back game, and kind of the rule of thumb that I'm sticking to with this Dolphins team is when everybody feels like they're in on them, it's time to get out. This feels very similar to that Bills matchup earlier in the year to me. I think the Eagles just find a way. This is the week we're going to find out what this Eagles team is made of, and if they cover it and get the job done and get a win, I think that speaks louder than anything else they could say.
Definitely. No, it would definitely be a huge win for the Eagles. I am nervous about that game, and I'll get to that one in a second. I don't have a pick on a side in that game, but let's get it over and talk to 1 o'clock. I hate this board this week. This is my least favorite NFL board of the year. I have 6 picks and 1 stretching it. So, and I'm going to have a teaser that I'll put out as well. But my first pick, and it's my favorite pick of the NFL board, is Bills -7.5 at the Patriots. That'll be my best bet. Josh Allen has 59 wins in his career. 45 of those 59 have been by 7 points or more. Since 2019, the Patriots are 15-22 and 13-22-2 against the spread versus teams above 500, which is the second worst against the spread mark in the NFL against teams that are above 500, ahead of just the Chicago Bears. Patriots are averaging just 1 point per drive this season, the lowest mark in the NFL. Patriots are 3-10 straight up, 2-11 against the spread in their last 13 games overall. I just think I'm at the point now where I'm in full fade mode with the Patriots now that Judon and Gonzalez are out. Mac Jones 0-13 against the spread as a dog in his last 13 games, 3-14 overall over his career against the spread as a dog. Over the last 20 years, Mac is 269th of 271 quarterbacks as a quarterback against the spread as an underdog. The least profitable active quarterback as an underdog. Mac is 5-0 against the spread versus Zach Wilson. 10-22-1 against all other quarterbacks against the spread. So give me the Bills at minus 7.5. I think they win this game by 20. I think this is a game you can do the alternate spread minus 13.5, maybe minus 10.5, get some plus money in there. I absolutely love the Bills in this game. This is a game that I don't have a lot of stats on this one. This is just a feel one. This is coming from the gut. Give me the Bucks minus 2.5 against the Falcons. 1 unit, small play. Ritter's 3-7 against the spread, 1-5 against the spread this year. 3-7 overall over his career. 1-3 against the spread on the road. He has not won a road game yet in his career. He lost his first home game last week. I think the Bucks are just better. So give me 2.5 points. You're basically taking the money line. Like, I think the Bucks win this game. It's that simple. I couldn't find a lot of numbers. Couldn't find a lot of nuggets, a lot of statistical trends. But I like the Bucks. Let's go to one that there are some numbers that back this one up, and it's slowly and surely. The beginning of the week, I was like, "Ugh, I'm gonna bet it," but it's gross and I don't like it. I like it now. I've talked myself in on it, and it's the Pittsburgh Steelers +3 at the Los Angeles Rams. Mike Tomlin, Mr. Underdog, 46-45 straight up, 56-31-4 against the spread as a dog, the most profitable underdog coach in the history of the NFL. Mike Tomlin is 45-20-2 against the spread as an underdog from week 5 forward, 37-30 straight up in those situations. Steelers haven't finished the season below 500 against the spread as an underdog since 2016. He is 15-6 off of a bye, and the Steelers are off of a bye in this game. Kenny Pickett obviously hasn't been, roses and butterflies. 11-5-1 against the spread in his career, though. He covers spreads. Off extended rest during the regular season, Kenny Pickett is 4-0 straight up and against the spread in his pro career, covering the spread by 8 points per game. Sean McVay is 25-16-1 against the spread versus the NFC West. 34-35-2 against the spread against non-divisional opponents. He owns the NFC West, not so much the rest of the NFL. This is another one. Not a lot of stats here for this one, but this is a gut play. Packers money line at the Broncos. It's gross. I put the Packers in my gambling graveyard, but they should be at least favored by a field goal here. The fact this is a money line is disrespectful. Broncos are 0-5-1 against the spread. Broncos defense allows the most yards per play, most opposing drives ending in scores, most points per drive, most yards per rush, and those numbers are not this year. Those are in NFL history. The Broncos are allowing 33.3 points per game this season. That is the most in the NFL this year. Wilson is 2-12 against the spread in his last 14 starts, 6-14-1 in Denver against the spread. It's just dreadful, dreadful stuff going on in Denver. And then you look at Sunday Night Football. Miami, Philadelphia. I'll be down there. I'll be tailgating this one, going to Xfinity for the game, unfortunately. I was hoping to get tickets, and then you look at it, and it's like, am I really going to spend $250? Like, I thought maybe the Phillies tickets, like that, people are spending money on that. Maybe it'll drive it down a little bit. Eagles tickets are always insane. Fun fact, I've never paid to go to an Eagles game. I've only ever been given tickets and went. Not so lucky this time. Going to the Bills game, though. But anyway, let's move on. I want to pour one out. I can't do it because I don't have anything to pour this into, but if I just pour this on my laptop. Pour one out for the Jalen Hurts anytime touchdown.
Uh-oh.
The books figured it out.
Uh-oh.
Minus 135.
Wow. That's still takeable. That's not
You can
awful.
play it. Yeah, you just can't hammer it at like a 6-unit play or else you're drinking a lot of juice. So I'll play it. It's not the best bet anymore. It's not the best value bet in sports anymore. Maybe we need him to not score for a couple weeks so you can get that back up. I don't know. Maybe that's what we need. But 23 rushing touchdowns in 23 starts. His last 23 starts. 36 rushing touchdowns in his 44 career starts. There's a reason. It should honestly be minus 200. And then my best bet in this game, and probably my third favorite bet of the week, is over 51.5 Dolphins-Eagles. I like the over here. I think the Dolphins win the game, but I think it's going to be a close, high-scoring affair. The Dolphins are 5th all-time in most points through 6 games. averaging 37.2 points per game, which feels like a fake college football Oregon number. Like it feels like what Oregon's averaging. Only behind the 2013 Broncos through 6 games in the Super Bowl era. They're averaging 8 yards per play. No one in the last 20 years has averaged more than 6.7 yards per play. That is just an insane, insane number of what Miami's doing. Their offense is so far ahead of the rest of the NFL. There's a bigger difference in yards per play between the Dolphins and the number 2 team than there is between the number 2 team and the number 32 team. That's how good the Dolphins offense is. I think the Dolphins win this game. I think the Dolphins are probably the 3rd best team in football right now. If I had to make my power rankings, I think it would go Chiefs, 49ers, Dolphins, Eagles, Lions. That would be my top 5. Then you get into like Jags, Ravens, Cowboys. Maybe you want to talk about the Bengals and the Bills. Those guys are probably right there as well.
Bills for sure.
I'm concerned about the Bills' injuries, even though I do obviously have a big bet on them this week. I proclaimed on Chalk Talk that I think that their Super Bowl contendership is over this year with all their injuries on defense. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is a little bit with that one. I'm a little worried about that, but I do think they kill New England this week. But let's move on. Let's go over to the hardwood. The hardwood. I don't think that's what they call it. Hardwood.
You nailed it.
That's
It's
what it is.
hardwood.
Yeah. I'm out of basketball rhythm there. Hardwood's a real word. Yeah, I don't know why. I think I was getting things mixed up on my brain there. But let's take a break. Let's get my brain cleared. Let's heat up the coffee. Let's clear the cobwebs. Because on the other side, we're going pretty much like 35 minutes straight. NBA season preview. Eastern Conference, Western Conference win totals. We'll give you who's going to the finals. We'll give you the MVP, the awards. We'll talk about the Sixers a little bit. We're letting Sean Barnard out of his NBA cage right here on the Tough Number Radio Show. It is time. Coming up next, right here on The Gambler.
Now you can relive the greatest moments from our 2023 iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Streaming only on Hulu.
Lenny Kravitz kicks things off with his biggest hits.
Foo Fighters get the whole crowd singing along.
Tim McGraw debuts his new song live.
Public Enemy brings the 90s hip-hop energy.
Fall Out Boy covers a classic while literally on fire. And so much more.
Relive the greatest moments from our iHeartRadio Music Festival.
Streaming now only on Hulu for a limited time.
Fox Sports Radio, The Gambler. Now, total traffic for Philadelphia.
Well, we'll start with a big problem on both sides of the northeast extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike. We have a closure in both directions, essentially between the Mid-County tolls and Lansdale. All of this because of a vehicle fire. So obviously, stay away at all costs. We'll let you know when things reopen. Eastbound Schuylkill, meanwhile, tied up the boulevard through Vine. Westbound, stop and go City Avenue on that through 202. Eric Herr, total traffic.
This report is sponsored by Audible. Escape with the best stories of the year on Audible. Hear celebrity memoirs, mysteries, true crime, sci-fi, and more. Ignite your imagination with audiobooks, podcasts, and originals. Sign up for a free 30-day trial at audible.com.
This Monday, come on out to Chickies and Pete's in Marlton, New Jersey for the All-Pro Green Legion show featuring Eagles defensive tackle Milton Williams. Stop on out from 6 to 8 p.m. once again this Monday at Chickies and Pete's in Marlton, New Jersey.
Are you a business owner, CEO, or responsible for marketing? If you are, iHeartMedia can help you reach your goals and find new customers. We reach more consumers in your target area than anyone else. And we can give you access to those potential customers more cost-effectively across radio, digital, podcasting, and social. We'd love to show you how iHeartMedia can work for you. From your cell, dial pound 250 and say keyword great results. That's pound 250 and say great results.
To some, this might sound like a typical family dog. But at Dog Chow, we know that for a veteran suffering from PTSD, this could be the sound of life-saving therapy.
Thanks, Betty.
That's why we've made it our mission to connect every military hero in need with a canine hero of their own. To learn about the simple ways you can help Dog Chow in our mission, visit dogchow.com/veterans.
Hey, man, you all right? Need me to call 911? No.
called Top Dog Law.
Get top dollar for your accident at topdoglaw.com. Once again, that's topdoglaw.com.
The Daily Ticket with Sean Brace on the drive home and the line change with John Jansen at 9. This is The Gambler.
Yeah, this one right here goes out to all the babies, mamas. Baby mamas. Yeah, go like this. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Ooh, I am for real. Never meant to make your daughter cry. I apologize a trillion times.
My baby is drama, mama. Don't like me. She doing things like having the boys come from her neighborhood to the studio trying to fight me. She need to get a piece of American pie and take her bite out. That's my house. I disconnect the cable and turn the lights out. And let her know her grandchild is a baby and not a paycheck. Private school, daycare, medical bills, I pay that. I love your mom and everything. See, I ain't the one who lay down. She want to rip you up and start a custody war. My lawyer, stay down. She never got a chance to hear my side of the story. We was divided. She had fish fries and cookouts for a child's birthday. I ain't invited. Despite it, I show her the utmost respect when I fall through. All you would defend that lady when I call you. Yeah.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
Welcome back to the Tough Cover Radio Show. That's a bop. I had to let it play out there a little bit. That is an absolute banger. Let's do it, Sean Barnard. The basketball season is here.
It is.
How are you feeling? How do you feel? Are you ready for it? Is it coming too early? Were you ready for it weeks ago? Where are you at?
I've finally hit my NBA mode and starting to get back in. I've watched a little bit of Sixers preseason basketball. I did miss last night because of the Phillies on, and I was down at JD McKillicuddy's with Sean Brace and John Jansen, did a little live show there. But for the most part, I have watched some of this. I'm seeing some Nick Nurse, some new offense, some new basketball things going on. So I am getting back in that more so than I thought I would. And even amid the Phillies run, the Eagles 5-1, I'm ready to watch some Sixers basketball. So yeah, I'm back in on basketball in general and back in on the NBA for sure.
All right, let's get it started then. We're going to go. I did my win totals. I have them right here as, what my win totals are here. So that's ranked. I think Sean Barnard, you ranked yours as well. I don't know if you looked at the over and unders on the win totals, but I'm going to pitch them at you. But my number one team in the Eastern Conference, and they have the second highest win total. I have the Milwaukee Bucks finishing 58-24. They went 58-24 last year. I have them winning the same amount of games, and I have them as the 1 seed here, which is over their number at 53.5. I don't think people realize what kind of an upgrade offensively Lillard is to Drew Holiday. I think it's so much bigger than the gap is defensively and so much more important. This is I just think just a perfect basketball team in terms of their starting rotation. I loved them adding Malik Beasley too. That's kind of went under the radar. We'll talk about. I don't want to bury the lead on my ultimate prediction here, but man, what a good team.
Yeah, I have the Bucks as number one as well. I love the two-man game, the Giannis and Dame answers every question they had as far as the biggest struggle with that team was half-court offense. They did not have a guy that could create. Even Giannis, as great as he is, he makes points look hard sometimes. That the way he attacks the basket is never easy for him. It takes an all-out effort. Adding a guy with the level of range that Dame has opens up everything. The way they're going to be able to unlock Giannis as a roller, I'm very excited to see. And defensively, Dame's in a perfect spot with guys like Giannis and Brook Lopez behind it. Brook Lopez, by the way, one of the most perennial underrated players across the NBA. I love him. I do think the Bucks are the number one team in the East and have a real argument for the best team across the league.
All right, I'm going to keep your win totals here as well. You have the over there. So let's go on to the other main contender in the Eastern Conference, and it's the Boston Celtics. I have them finishing 1 win behind, same number that they finished at last year. So I might have been a little bit of a cop out here, but they made a lot of changes. Speaking of Drew Holiday, they added Drew Holiday and they added Kristaps Porzingis. I think they're maybe about the same. I think they're about as good as they were. They're different, but maybe the same. I can't make a decision. I think Robert Williams is a big loss. Smart's a big loss. I'm higher on Brogdon than a lot of people are still. So I do think that they lost guys, but I am going over that 54.5 number. Tatum and Brown play a lot. Not a lot of sitting there. They're pretty durable. I'm also way higher on Tatum and Brown. Like I'm listening to off-season pods talking about like win totals and all NBA predictions, and like I feel like people have thrown Tatum and Brown in the trash because of like a bad series or two against Miami over the last couple of years. And not that this is the show where we're going to sit here and talk a lot of praise about the Celtics, but I think they're two. Like I think Tatum's a top 7 player in the world, and I think maybe top 5, and I think Brown is a top 20 player in the world. Like I think Brown gets talked about really negatively because of that contract he just signed. I think you're a moron if you're a fan of a team that would have him and wouldn't want him to sign that contract.
100%. And it's the
give me the over. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also on the over for the Celtics, and I agree with a lot of your points there. I do think they lost a lot, and I was very ready to get up here and be able to be proclaiming that I think the Celtics are going to take a step back this year when they made that Marcus Smart trade and got rid of him. I think Marcus Smart was so much of that identity of that team, and I'm very happy that he won't be wearing a Celtics uniform anymore, but I'm very much a Marcus Smart guy, that I think he impacts winning at a very high level. We'll get to him when we get over to the Grizzlies, but I think he's going to have a very impressive year. But they went and replaced him with Drew Holiday, which brings a lot of the good of Marcus Smart without some of the extra Marcus Smart stuff. So I think they did a good job there. I will say Kristaps Porzingis has looked much more spry than I expected in what I've seen from him in preseason. He's moving healthier than I've seen him in a couple years at this point. I think it's a pretty net neutral offseason. But to your biggest point is, yeah, Jason Tatum is that dude. As long as he's on the floor and he plays often, they have a chance to win. And I do like their over. I have them as number 2 in the East.
Yeah, so then it's by the way, the East kind of forms itself. Like when you're looking at it, it's kind of easy to rank them. The West is insane. We're going to get to the West, but the West is so hard to figure out. 3, I'm curious if you have the same team as I do here. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers here slotting in as my 3 seed, 53-29. They won 51 games. I think they win slightly more. They added Max Strus and George Niang. Those are nice pieces. They were a team last year where it really felt like they had 4 NBA players, and they were trying to mix and match around that, or maybe 5, including LeVert. I'm not the biggest LeVert guy, but five of those guys, and then you add 2 more, and they added a couple other pieces. I think Cleveland, they will be there's a chance, by the way, that Cleveland turns into a Utah type team this year, that they win 60 games. I could absolutely see that, but their questions come in the playoffs with their offense and with their coaching. But I do think they improve this year in the regular season. So give me their over at 50.5.
Yeah, I have the Cavs at number 4 in the East. My number 3 team, I still have the Sixers. There's so much uncertainty with this team. We don't know what to make. I don't think we're really going to see the impacts of this until the postseason. That I think regular season, this is still going to be a team that rakes up wins. As long as Joel Embiid is on the floor, they have a chance to win. I love what Nick Nurse is bringing. I wish there was a more stable roster situation so I could be all the way in on the Sixers team, because I am all the way in on Nick Nurse. The James Harden thing is obviously the overhanging issue, but I don't think we really see the Sixers issues until the postseason. I think regular season, they're still going to be a 50+ win team. I'm seeing their win or their total at 48.5. I think the over is an easy answer there, and I still have the Sixers as the 3rd team in the East.
There are 47.5 on the market. If you want to try to go find one of those. But I agree with pretty much everything you said. I'm all in on Nick Nurse. I have them as the 4 seed. I have them winning 1 less game than Cleveland. So I have them at 52-30, which is only 2 less games than they won last year. I think Joel Embiid's automatically 48 wins as long as he's healthy. I wouldn't bet the win total just because of the health factor. I feel like you are taking a big bet there. And we'll get to a team that's the exact opposite of that later, and I will mention that. But with the Sixers, I would take their over, since we are picking everyone here. So for Cleveland, I'm assuming you're on the over there for the Sixers at 47.5. For Cleveland at 50.5, you have them 4th. We just have them flip-flopped. Would you have them over or under that 50.5 number?
I'm close. I'm flip-flopping. I'll still go over. I think that's a narrow one. I don't see them taking as large of a leap as I think you do, but I do agree that the Max Strus and Niang additions are huge, that they just needed shooting. To be able to space the floor with guys like that is going to make a huge impact in opening things up. So I do like them taking a step forward. I'll go with the over.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I'm only 2.5 wins over. So it's not like an extreme take for me there. But let's go to my number 5 seed. And this might be a bit of an upset, because I know that there's at least 2 other teams that finished higher last year and have higher win totals. But a team that I'm kind of high on when I start to look at their roster and I start to look at their depth and I look at how they did last year once Quinn Snyder was hired is the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks are my 5 seed. I have them at 46 and 36. And it's not like this is some crazy thing. Like they won upper 40 games 2 years ago. We know, or 3 years ago, I mean. The last 2 years, they've been right around 500. And I think you add some pieces here. There's some changes. You drafted Kobe Buffkin. I think Quinn Snyder is definitely a huge improvement there. I think that they're gonna. I think they're gonna win 46 games. I think Trey kind of got forgotten a little bit last year. I think Trey's gonna have a really good year and more impactful to winning year under Quinn Snyder. I think Quinn Snyder is one of the top 5 coaches in basketball. So give me the Atlanta over at 41.5. It's actually one of my favorite overs.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not as much of a Hawks guy as you for sure. The thing I will totally agree with you on is I think Trae Young has become one of the most underrated players in the NBA. That I don't think people recognize what a elite passer and scorer this guy is. His passing is especially what stands out to me in his game, especially as a lob thrower and a guy that's able to make the defenses make decisions and then react to that. But I don't have as much optimism for the Hawks as a whole. I'm not a DeJounte Murray guy. I have them as the number 8 seed in the Eastern Conference is my pick there. So way down.
Wow, that's a sticking point. That's interesting. So here's what I wanted to just go through, just like the roster. I was shocked looking at it, and the big thing was Sadiq Bey. When they got him last year, they were a different team, and I love Sadiq Bey. I've always been I thought that was a dumb trade for Detroit. But you look at the roster, you have Trey DeJounte, Bogdan Bey, and Capella as a starting lineup. Like Trey is a top 5 point guard. DeJounte, I'm not a DeJounte Murray guy, but he's at least an above average starting 2. DeAndre Hunter or Bogdan, that's at least Bogdan, I think, is an average wing. And then you have Sadiq Bey, who I think is a really solid stretch 4. Capella, at least an average center. Then you have Buffkin and Griffin, who are both like young upside kind of guard pieces. Griffin played really well. It seems like Snyder didn't like him, but it seems like he was really up and down and played really well when he got a chance. Patty Mills, a nice veteran presence they added. I'm a long time Jalen Johnson guy. Like he in spurts has been good in little moments. And I think I've always loved him dating back to his college days. And Okongwu is like a perfect backup 5. I really like this Hawks roster. And I think John Collins might be addition by subtraction to this team.
Yeah, an all-time perennial trade rumors guy in John Collins. But yeah, you can make a fair argument. Jalen Johnson's a guy. I don't understand why the leash is so short on him. Like he's a guy I would like to see expanded. I'm not a DeAndre Hunter guy at all. He's very much like a theoretical basketball player to me, and people keep trying to get me to believe in it, and I just really don't at this point. Terrence Mann, yeah, fits right in that category. So I can see the argument for the Hawks. I think DeJounte Murray is a bad vibes guy. I don't really like. I think that's my sticking point with the Hawks is I don't believe in DeJounte Murray to be a legitimate number 2.
That's fair. That's definitely fair. I think he can be a number 2 to the point where they win 46 games and be like a 5 seed. And I think the reason he can be that is I think that the roster is really deep around it. So that's where I'm at with the Hawks. And honestly, I flip-flopped them with this team, and I just decided that this team probably will decide to not care about the regular season because they just don't. And it's the Miami Heat. I have them at 45 and 37. I have them over I'm sorry. I have them under their 45.5 number. So I'm going under, and I'm only a half point under. So it's not, or half win under. So it's not like some crazy take. I mean, Vegas is thinking the same thing. Like they might just not care about the regular season. And I get it. They're going to figure it out. Like maybe Jaime Jaquez turns into just an awesome player right away. Maybe Haywood Highsmith is the new Max Strus. Maybe, Duncan Robinson just fills the role that they left there. Maybe Gabe Vincent doesn't matter. Maybe Josh Richardson turns back into the Miami Heat version of Josh Richardson, but their roster is not appealing when you look at it as it was last year. They definitely lost multiple pieces there. So I just don't buy them. I never do. I think they're phony frauds who shot 80% from 3 last year in a BS fluky run.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you on this one. I think they're going to pretty much chalk up the regular season. They'll eventually make some sort of trade. I feel they need to get some sort of life in that franchise, or maybe they just don't. They don't care. I have them all the way down as the number 9 seed in the Eastern Conference. Miami.
Wow.
And I think they're going to have the same blueprint that they just want to take it to the dance, and then they're going to make the magic happen from there. I think Jimmy Butler will turn it on when playoffs come, and they will still be a threat. They're not a team that I would want to play in the postseason, but throughout the regular season, I think there's going to be a lot of nights where the Heat just straight up don't have it, and they'll pull it together when it matters most. So I have them all the way down at the 9th seed.
And then for Atlanta at 41.5, would you go over or under that number?
I'll go under slightly on that as well.
All right, and let's get to the New York Knicks, who I'm low on this year. I have them at 7. I have them as the top play-in team. But fun fact, and I'll throw it all out there right now. My play-in, I have New York at the 7, Indiana at the 8, Charlotte at the 9, which is actually one of my favorite win totals on the entire board. And I had a feeling you were going to be low on Charlotte and that this would be an argument. But Charlotte at 9 and Orlando at 10. I have each of them at 40 and 42. I have New York, Indiana, Charlotte, and Orlando exactly even in my power rankings. So give me the under at 45.5 for New York. Where are you over on? Before I'll throw it to you to kind of get your full takes, but just on the over under sides of things, over under 45.5 for the Knicks.
Over. I'm over on the Knicks. I have them as my 5 seed.
Okay, all right. We'll talk about that in a second. Indiana 38.5 over or under.
Over.
Charlotte 30.5 over or under.
30 is low enough. I'll go over on that. I do like Charlotte.
And then Orlando 37.5 over or under.
Under, unfortunately. I want to be more in than I am.
I kind of feel the same way. So we'll talk about that. New York. Let's start with New York. 45.5 is their number. You went over. They won 47 games last year. You think they're probably, I assume you probably think they're the same team and you just think they'll do the same thing?
I think Jalen Brunson is a winner, man.
Yeah,
I think
I agree with that.
I believe in Jalen Brunson as the centerpiece. I'm not a Randall guy. I'm not an RJ Barrett guy, but there's enough juice to Jalen Brunson to me to just lead this team. And they are a pretty complete team. Like, there were no real holes in that Knicks team last year. They added a little bit this offseason. I don't think they made anything too impactful, but I think that they just have enough tools. They have a proper basketball team. They're pretty well coached. Thibodeau's still a guy that's digging into them, getting the most out of them. So I think they're going to be a tough team on a night-by-night basis. And Brunson's the selling point for me. Like, if you want to talk about like Trae Young is an underrated guy, like Jalen Brunson's in the exact same conversation. And frankly, I think he's a better basketball player than Trae Young.
Wow. Really?
I do.
I love Jalen Brunson as much as anyone. I don't think I can go that far.
Really?
I don't think I can go that far. I think Trae Young's really just insanely talented. And I'm not a Trae Young guy either. For a long time, I had my questions, but I think Trae Young's really, really just really talented. But so you had New York at your 5 seed. Indiana, where did you have them slotted in at? By the way, my take on New York is I just think that they had like such historic bench output last year. Like, they had the best bench in NBA history. If you look at certain metrics with plus minus, with how bad they were with Randall and Barrett on the court. I think a couple injuries here and there. They were really, really healthy for the entire year last year as a whole. I just don't think you're getting the same thing second straight year with Thibodeau playing guys like 40 minutes. So I think there's just going to be natural regression. I think they'll still be competitive. I have them at 40 and 42, but I love that under there. That under is one of my favorite unders. But Indiana, where did you have them ranked? You went over on their total at 38.5. I have them at 40 and 42.
Yeah, I have them as the 7th seed in the East. That I do believe in the leap by Indiana this year. Benedict Mathurin is my guy. I love Ben Mathurin. I have since Arizona, and I'm seeing progress. He looks like he can play make a little more. I know it's just preseason, not time to get too hyped up yet, but it does look like he's developing. He's on the track that I want him to be on. Tyrese Halliburton is the real deal. They have some other pieces here, some young guys growing, some role players that look like they're coming into themselves. So I do like Indiana to take a big leap this year, and I have them as the 7th seed in the East.
And then Charlotte. So the Charlotte Hornets, I think this depth chart is like, it's impressive to me. And also, people forget because last year LaMelo Ball played a couple games. Miles Bridges played like no games, like obviously 0 games. And who knows if he'll play this year. Gordon Hayward played like 40 games. Like everyone on this roster missed just an absolute ton of time. But you look at Charlotte's roster, it's a better roster version than the team that was like consistently a play-in team 2, 3, 4 years ago. And Charlotte, you have LaMelo, Terry Rozier. You add Brandon Miller, who I think we're both higher on than consensus with Brandon Miller. Miles Bridges, who knows if he plays, but Miles Bridges. You have Mark Williams and Nick Richards. who I think are like both solid fives, like both defensive, can kind of hold their own as rim protectors. And then the bench is where it gets a little hazy, but you still have Gordon Hayward. Like, let's say you have LaMelo, Rozier, Miller, Bridges, and Williams as a starting five. You have a solid backup five in Richards, and you have Hayward as an incredible, even if he starts and Bridges is a bench player, you have three solid forwards there. You really only have to find like one or two more guys. Like, you have Cody Martin. He can maybe be a rotational guy. You have Nick Smith Jr. I'm not a fan, but they picked him high for a reason. They probably are expecting him to play. JT Thor, he was a high pick recently. I'm sure they expect him to play. I just think that I don't think JT Thor's bad at all. I think you can definitely get him out there for some wing minutes. And I just think this team is just as good as any of these other Orlando, Indiana, Brooklyn, Chicago type teams, Toronto type teams in the middle of the East.
Yeah, you make some great points there. I like the Hornets as well. I'll also stick up for LaMelo Ball a little bit, that I think he's a guy that gets forgotten. I think the way that he plays sometimes takes away from what he's actually doing, because he is a no-look pass guy, throw it behind the back, play with some swagger. That's who he is, and I love that about him. But he's a good basketball player, man. And he had a ton of injuries last year, rolled his ankle a couple times, and right when he got back, he hurt it again. I'm ready for a full year of LaMelo. This feels like the time where he starts to elevate himself in the NBA conversation. And by the way, they're a big team too. They have a ton of size there. LaMelo's big for a point guard. Brandon Miller's big for a wing. They have really good size around that whole team, top to bottom. I have the Hornets at the number 12 spot in the East, so I'm not that high on them as you, but I do think that they're going to be a respectable squad, and they are moving in the right direction, which it should be huge for them.
Like, when LaMelo Ball plays, the Hornets win games. Like, in 2021 or 2020, 2021, they went 33-39, made the play-in. The next year, and by the way, they did that while having the number. It's not that good. Never mind. I won't give that stat. And then the next year in 21-22, they finished 43-39, and they finished 15th in net rating. Like, they were an average team. They made the play-in yet again. And then last year, even when he played, they were near 500 in the games LaMelo played, but they were like dreadful in the games that he missed. So I think LaMelo Ball is a little, not like a winner. It's hard to say that at this point, but like, I think he gives you a high floor as just a really high IQ point guard. And like you said, I think a lot of people look at him as this flashy kind of guy, but he is that, but he also is a really high IQ point guard. So with great vision, just like his brother. And then Orlando, you said something, you're not as in as you want to be. I'm kind of with you. So I have the over at 37.5. Trilbro dude and a guy, Dredd, who he has on a lot, who I go back and forth with about basketball, both told me this is one of their favorite overs, and they're both like Franz Wagner truthers. They think he's like the best player in the world. But they told me that they wouldn't trade, or this is because we had an argument. They wouldn't have traded Franz for Trey. Do you think that's crazy?
Yeah, I do think that's crazy. I like Franz a lot, but yeah, no, I do think that's crazy.
I would love Trey and Paolo together in Orlando. That'd be an awesome pair. But yeah, so I'm the same way. Like, Paolo and Franz are there. You have like a million point guards with like Fultz and Anthony and Black, and I think I'm even forgetting Suggs. Like, you have just like a million point guards who all want to start. I don't know, like Wendell Carter, I've never been like as crazy about. I think he's like the definition of mid. Like, I think he's just so average on both. Like, I just think he's super average. I have them at 39-43. I have them sneaking into the play-in, and it's mainly just off the strength of, I think Paolo breaks out this year and really has an awesome year. He was really big in USA, right? Playing internationally. I think Paolo is a superstar. So I think Paolo is going to be awesome. And there's a debate like who's more valuable, Paolo or Franz. And I think Trill and them would say Franz. And I think that's crazy. I think Paolo is more valuable. I think Paolo is awesome. So I'm trusting my faith in Paolo here, but I wouldn't be surprised if they win. Like, they won 34 last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 34 again. And we're kind of like, what the heck?
Yeah, I'll go slightly over just on that number, but I'm in the same boat that I just don't see them taking the leap that I think a lot of people do. I like Paolo. I do think he's the real deal. It's almost a weird take with this Orlando team that I feel like they have like too many plants in the same pot, that these guys are kind of getting on their own toes as far as growth. Like, all these guards, I like them pretty much all. Not Anthony Black. I'm not an Anthony Black guy. I'm anti-Anthony Black, but everybody else I pretty much like on that team. And then the big man spot, I don't think Wendell Carter is anything special either. I am a Franz Wagner guy. I think he's terrific, but it's almost swung to the point where now he's becoming overrated by all this noise about him. Like, he's a phenomenal basketball player and a guy that's, I think, is a winner and huge size, makes good decisions, is starting to play make a little bit. There's a lot to like, but I don't know. There's something off about this Orlando team that I can't quite put my finger on, and I think it is. There's just too much going on.
Yeah, we might. By the way, we're going a little long here. We might end up wrapping into the 1 o'clock hour. We'll see. But unless Sean gives me the Knicks over there, the veto. But let's move on to Brooklyn, who won 45 games last year, but kind of fake because a lot of that was with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Their over under is 37.5. I have them at 35. I have them missing the play in. I think a lot of the optimism about the fact that they kept a play in spot, I think is kind of over. I think it's overstated. They went 13-19 to close the year. That they don't impress me at all. They were like a 33-win team if you schedule it out. I have them at 35 wins, under the 37.5. Where do you have them ranked, and are you going over or under that 37.5?
Yeah, I'm hitting that over, and this might be the one we disagree on the most. I have them all the way up at the 6th seed for the Nets.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm buying in a little. Mikal Bridges is the centerpiece. Cam Johnson, I believe in. I think they're going to be. Yeah, I don't think they're going to be a playoff threat or anything like that. They're even a team that I would be totally fine with facing off in the playoffs. But I do think that there's enough talent there to at least believe in for the regular season. Bridges, I think, is going to take another stride forward this year. Dorian Finney-Smith, I like. Dinwiddie's okay. Claxton, as much as he's frustrating, I do like him as a basketball player. I have no idea what to make of the Ben Simmons show and whatever's going to happen with that. I'm ready to watch people get tricked all over again because I'm already seeing it. But I do think overall, Mikal Bridges is the biggest calling card to me, that I think he proved last year, specifically in the postseason, that he is capable of being his own shot creator, being a legitimate number one option on the team. And I think we're going to see what that really looks like this year. And my gamble is that I think he takes another stride forward.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I'm not a fan of the depth of the roster outside of Mikal and Cam Johnson, who I love both of those guys. But I'm a little skeptical about the rest of the roster. And it's a similar situation here, and I am going over on this next team, but it's the Detroit Pistons. I have the Detroit Pistons ranked 12th. I am going over. They're 27.5. They won 17 games last year. They were the worst team in the East. Cade Cunningham's going to be the most improved player, I think. I think Cade has a huge year. We are a Cade Cunningham program here on the Tough Cover Radio show. I think Jaden Ivey improves a lot this year. There are some questions about the wings on this team. Bohan's probably going to get traded. You have some questions about the big men as well. But I do think the Monty Williams getting hired will help them out. I think they will be just a more competent organization. So give me the over here. What do you think about that 27.5 number?
It's low enough that I'll take the over on it as well, but I don't see them taking the leap that I think they probably should. I'm with you on Cade, that I'm excited to see him back on the floor. He's a guy that I liked back in college, feels like has fallen off the map completely, and I think this is the year that he kind of reemerges. I love the combination of what they're building. They got a decent amount of big man depth that is all kind of competing with each other, so I'm excited to see what turns out of that. It's a little bit of the model of just bring in the most talent and just let itself work it out there in Detroit as far as the big man spot goes, with the James Wisemans and all the other pieces that they're bringing in. So I'm still going with the over. I think this is going to be a year of them figuring out who's here to stay, who's a legitimate piece or not. I have them as the 12th seed as well, so not super high expectations, but I do like that number.
Let's move on to two teams. I haven't heard. I feel like you're probably at least going to be way higher on one of these two teams because I'm really low on two teams. And one of them is the Chicago Bulls. Their over-under is at 37.5. I have them 13th. I think this is the year where you start to see, DeMar DeRozan's older. You could see an injury. You could see regression. Zach LaVine's been really injury-plagued. You could see him miss more time. Vucevic is older. You could see either of those things. I just think there's a lot of things building together. I'm not a Patrick Williams guy. I just think there's a lot that could go wrong with this team. I think you could see a coach getting fired. He's kind of on the end of his rope there in Chicago, I feel like. I just think this is, you look at all these other teams, I think there's more reasons to be optimistic. I know they won 40 games last year, but I have them getting worse. I think they win 31. So I'm going heavy under at 37.5.
Yeah, I'm under as well. That I'm pretty out on this team. I have them as the 11th spot, so a little bit higher than you, but I don't understand what their vision is. I want this organization to pick a direction and go for it. The Vucevic re-signing makes zero sense to me. I think it's time to blow it up in Chicago. That's the team that I think the Sixers are sneaky looking at and seeing how things play out over the first couple games of the season. But yeah, I don't have a ton of optimism for how their season shakes out.
One more team that I'm kind of the same way on is the Toronto Raptors. Their over-unders at 36.5. I have them 14th. I think they bottom out, and I think Pascal Siakam ends up on another team by January. I think we see a full-on collapse from Toronto. I think Fred VanVleet was important, but more than anything, Nick Nurse is the best regular season coach in basketball. Those teams had no right to be as good as they were. I look at him almost like a Gabe Kapler. I would not want to be the next guy that takes the San Francisco Giants managerial job, and I would not have wanted to be the guy that takes the Toronto Raptors head coaching job, because I think that roster is ready for a collapse. I think Nick Nurse was doing Lord's work, working Scotty Barnes into an offense, because I think that guy's got nothing in his bag. So give me the under here hard at 36.5. I have him winning 26 games.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have the Toronto Raptors as my number 15 seed in the East. That I have them all the way down there. So I'm pretty out on them. I think this is going to be another blow-up situation. I'm not a Pascal Siakam guy. I'm not a Scotty Barnes guy. They've kind of tried to make this work with all these positionless, versatile guys. The bottom line is some of these guys just don't have the adequate basketball skills to fill the roles that they're designed to. Scotty Barnes, you touched on it. I don't see a world where this guy's looked at as ever like a number one offensive option in the way that the Raptors seem to do. I don't really think Pascal Siakam is either. So I don't know. I think this is a blow up. I do think Siakam ends up elsewhere as well. And this is a team that I think is going to turn into a dumpster fire this year.
One last one, Washington, who's my 15th. I think they're going to be a dumpster fire. I think they're going to be the worst team in the sport. I've been winning 14 games, 14-68. I have their under at 23.5. What are your thoughts on 23.5?
I'll go slightly under as well. I don't think they're as bad as you. I have them as the 14th seed, so I'm not speaking to the optimism. I will say it's going to be an entertaining bad team. That Jordan Poole will make it worth your while that you're watching that. Kyle Kuzma, it'll be the swaggiest bad basketball team ever. But yeah, I don't see this translating to wins in a major way. But I am intrigued to see what Jordan Poole looks like outside of the Warriors.
They just need to put baddies in the stands constantly there for Jordan Poole and Kuzma, for that matter. Let's move on to the Western Conference, and this is one of my favorite overs on the board, and I hate to say it. We know how I feel about the fat Serbian in Denver who obviously won a NBA championship, but he doesn't jump, so it's hard for him to get hurt. So give me the over at 52.5 for Denver. I have them as my 1 seed in the West. I have them winning 56 games. They actually only won 53 last year, but I think that they win just a bit more. And I think a lot of people expect the opposite to happen, but I think I think that home court is just such an advantage. 34-7 last year. Jokic doesn't get hurt. You don't have to worry about that. So every time I had to add a couple wins, I actually finished under on wins when I did this and added it up. So when I added a couple wins every time, it would end up being Denver that got added wins, because it's like, they'll win They'll win one more game at home. They'll go 37-4 at home this year. So yeah, that's kind of where I ended up. So give me the over there at 52.5.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you until it's proven that you can't take them off that top spot. And that offense just flows. Like, there's no injury risk. They got it down to a science, the way they play off Jokic. And I like the guys that they have stepping up. Christian Braun's a guy I'm buying stock in this year that I think is going to play a real role. He's going to be that Bruce Brown guy for them this year. Peyton Watson, I think, will take a stride forward. They have guys filling up, and they really didn't lose that much. That Bruce Brown's really the biggest notable piece that won't be there anymore. It's unfortunate we got to keep taking the L's on the whole Nuggets situation, but it is what it is. They're going to be very good.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely going to be very, very good. My number 2 seed is my team that I'm picking to win the Western Conference, and it's the Phoenix Suns.
Wow.
My number 2 seed is the Phoenix Suns, and this is just me being like a hooper. This is just a hooper pick, and it's just, I know ball, so they're just going to score 140 points per game. Bradley Beal. Exactly. And I love it. I'm all in. I decided I don't care. They have enough guys like NBA guy. I hated the trade at first of Ayton. I think they should have held on just to see what would come free later on. But Grayson Allen is a competent NBA player who can make threes and stand there and play some defense. Josh Okogie, I think, can step up in some roles there. I'm a big Okogie guy. Nurkic, I think, is washed, but if he's not washed, then maybe you can get something out of them. I think they will be able to trade for guys at the deadline for second-round picks and stuff. Like, I know they don't have a lot of picks remaining, but I think that there will be like maneuvers to be made there for Phoenix and to take expiring contracts. You have Eric Gordon. Maybe you can deal him out. Like, there's a lot of ways for Phoenix to move and to get better. but ultimately Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker. Feels like that's going to be enough to me. So give me the over at 51.5. I have them my 2 seed at 54 wins.
Yeah, I'm going with the under here. I have them as my 5 seed. I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, but I think Hoopers show up come playoff time. That this is a
That
team,
might be true.
Yeah, this is a team I want no part of in the postseason. I think there's going to be regular season games where KD doesn't suit up, or they're not clicking on all cylinders, whatever it is. They will absolutely be a dangerous team come playoff time, but I think for the regular season that it slips them by a little bit. So I have them dropped all the way down to the 5th seed.
This is where it gets crazy for me. My number 3 seed, a little bit of a shocker. The Oklahoma City Thunder.
Wow.
I'm all in. This roster's so deep. There's so many guys. There's so many guys ready to break out. This team won 40 games last year. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander missed a ton of time. I mean, you look at this roster. I think it's like maybe the deepest roster in the West. Like maybe not the best overall, but maybe the deepest. You have SGA, Giddey, Dort, Williams, and Holmgren as your starting lineup. You have Cason Wallace, a guy who I think is going to step in and be really good right away. You have Isaiah Joe, who's a guy who was really good for them. Obviously, we know about it here. Kenrick Williams, a guy who I've always been high on. Poku, I don't know. I don't think Poku should be playing, but people like him. Jalen Williams, definitely a good backup forward. And then JRE, Jeremiah Robinson Earl, who has stepped up at times for them as a backup forward. I just think they're super deep. They have so much. They have so many guys that can that can get better. Giddey's getting better every year. Dort better every year. Williams better every year. Chet, we have no idea what he's going to be. He could be a stud for right away, for all we know. I think he will be good right away. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I think he could win the MVP this year. The guy averaged 30 last year. If this guy plays a full year and they're a 3 seed there, he's going to be an MVP candidate. I think he's going to be All-NBA first team 2nd straight year. He got that last year. I think he's going to do it again. I'm all in on the Oklahoma City Thunder. I could see them being the 2 seed. Like I'm all in. Give me their over. It's my favorite on the board, maybe at 44.5. And Vegas believes in them. 44.5. It's the same as Dallas, right below the LA team. Same as Sacramento, who was a 3 seed last year. Like Vegas believes in this Thunder team, just not quite as much as I do at 51 wins.
Yeah, I love this Thunder team, but I can't believe I got to be the negative guy in this conversation. I have them at the 7 seed. I do think they make the playoffs. I do think they're a dangerous team. I think they're still learning. They're, figuring out who's real, who's not in this whole thing. I'm a big Chet Holmgren guy. That's my rookie of the year pick that I think everyone should be hammering right now.
Love it.
Shai is the real deal. He absolutely is a top 10 talent across the NBA, and we'll prove it again this year. I don't see them taking quite the leap you do this year, but I am absolutely in on this franchise, and probably the franchise across all of the NBA that is best suited for the next decade.
Where did you have them ranked again?
7th.
All right, that's not bad. That's not bad. I expected maybe even a bit lower. But let's move on to my 4 and 5 and 6. I'm actually just going to do this as a bunch because you could tell me anything happens to these 3 teams: the Los Angeles Clippers, the Los Angeles Lakers, and the Dallas Mavericks. I have them at 4, 5, and 6. I have them all winning exactly, what's the number here? 48 games. They all, the Clippers and Lakers both won 44 last year. Dallas won 38. So I do have all of them winning more than they did last year. And I have the Clippers over 46.5, the Lakers over 47.5, and the Mavs over 44.5. I wouldn't bet any of those with your money, Sean Barnard, let alone my money. I wouldn't be betting any of those. You can't rely on any of those 3 teams health-wise, whether it's Kyrie, whether it's LeBron now at this age of his career, obviously Anthony Davis, or whether it's Kawhi and Paul George. Or James Harden if he ends up there, or Russell Westbrook. It's just, you can't rely on any of those teams. But for the sake of this, discussion, I'm going over on all of them. Where are you at with those teams?
Yeah, I'll start with the Mavs. I'm the most out on. I have them all the way down at the 10 seed in my rankings here, that I just see the wheels falling off one way or another with that team. The Kyrie thing's too much of a red flag. And as much as I love Luka, it just hasn't raised the floor of the rest of the guys in the way that I think it should. Just to kind of go down and context my list. So I have the Nuggets number 1. I have the Memphis Grizzlies number 2 that I want to get into a little bit.
I had them 8.
Wow. Okay. Well, then I go Lakers, Warriors, Suns, Kings, Thunder, then Pelicans, then Clippers. So I have the Clippers all the way down at the number 9 seed as well. A lot of question marks here. The West, you can make a completely different list, and I think it's fair that I have much more, wide open out here. But I'm not high on particularly any of the teams that you mentioned there.
So you're going under on all 3?
What was the
Clippers
number?
40, Clippers 46.5 under, I
Under.
imagine, if you have them 9. Lakers 47.5.
Yeah, I'll go under all three. Yeah.
All right. So by the way I had it ranked, and we're gonna get into it just a little bit. We're gonna, continue just a little bit over here, but I got Nuggets, Suns, Thunder, Clippers, Lakers, Mavericks, Warriors, Grizzlies, Kings, Jazz, Pelicans, T-Wolves, or actually T-Wolves, Pelicans, Spurs, Rockets, Trailblazers. So 7, I have the Warriors here at 40. I have them winning 44 games. I like their under at 48.5. I think they're going to have the same exact year they had last year at 44 wins. They're just going to cruise through it, just get in, and then they'll worry about it from there. Where did you have Golden State ranked again?
I have them as 4, so I'm taking the over on this. Yeah, I like Chris Paul. I actually like the addition. I think more than most. I think it's going to be a cool outlook to have like a true point guard on that team. Let Steph Curry do some more off ball stuff, do his movement, do all these things. Klay Thompson. This is going to be a last dance year for this team. There's no doubt about it. That we know that Chris Paul's on a 1-year deal. All these guys are getting old now. I think they do bring it this year. That's going to show up in the playoffs as well. But I think they get past that number.
And then the big argument here, I think, so Memphis, I have them at 41-41. They won 51 games last year. I do think Ja missing 60 games is going to matter. I know that the argument is that they've been really good without him. They added Smart, and I think they did the right things to do the right, to try to be good without him. But I just think over a long stretch, you're going to feel it more than you did in short spurts of injuries or short spurts of like missing games due to rest. And then I think you're also like, you have to stay so healthy if you're this Grizzlies roster for that 60-game stretch. I'm just skeptical with the way that Jenkins does ride his starters. He plays them a lot of minutes. So I think Memphis is going to have a hard time replicating the success they've had lately. But my prediction is they're an 8 or a 7 seed that ends up like over the last month of the year, maybe being like one of the best teams in basketball. And it's like, oh my God, they're an 8 seed or like a 7 seed, but you do not want to see Ja Morant and this team that got better figuring out what they are without him, and then they add him to the mix. So yeah, I could definitely see that kind of being the way it goes. I imagine you're going over on this one.
Yeah, I'm going over on this one. I'll start by saying I'm not a Ja Morant guy. I think off-court situations aside, I think he's flawed as a basketball player. I'm a huge Jaren Jackson Jr. guy. I love him. I also think Desmond Bane is the real deal, that I think he's going to take another leap forward this year. And Marcus Smart is who Dylan Brooks thinks he is. That I love this addition for the Grizzlies. I think this is a match made in heaven. That I think he's going to do all the Dylan Brooks things, but better. That Marcus Smart, I think, is much more a guy that translates to winning. I think he's going to fill that role like a glove. And I think this Grizzlies team, it definitely isn't great being without Ja for the length of time that they will. But I think there's enough talent here. I think I like the Desmond Bane taking a stride forward this year. He's really good. He's learning some shot creation now, one of the best 3-point shooters across the entire league, a guy that can defend as well. So Jaren Jackson Jr., he figures it out, I think has a chance to be like a top 20 talent in the league if he puts it all together. So I'm in on enough talent on this Grizzlies team. I think they're going to be right in the contending mix.
And then you have the Kings. I had the Kings falling back to 9. I'm skeptical on the Kings. I think that's a true regression candidate. I think it's kind of the same way as the Knicks a couple of years ago when they popped up out of nowhere and had that big year. The next year, they regressed back to the 30s. I had the Kings winning 39 games. They'll be a play-in team at that number, but I have them way under their 44.5 number. They won 48 last year. Where are you going here?
I kept them at 6. I think they're going to be okay, but there's definitely a chance they take the regression. I do believe in De'Aaron Fox specifically. I think he's like elevated his game to be like a true guy that can run a team, guy that can get buckets. I mean, he led the NBA in clutch time points last year, and he was phenomenal. That mid-range is a legit asset in his game, and now he's turning into a 3-level scorer because we know his quickness, that he can get to the rim. His 3-point shot has come a long way, and the fact that he's added this mid-range game is a big deal. So I'm still giving the Kings their respect and keeping them at 6. I'll go slightly over on that.
And by the way, the Thunder, 44.5. Did you go over or under there?
I'll go. I guess I have to go under, thinking of the math here. So I think that's close, though. I think they're right in that window.
So then the next team, this is kind of like similar to the Hawks and the Hornets, a team that I wasn't expecting to be all in on, but I look at their roster and I know I said something negative about John Collins earlier, but the Utah Jazz here have a pretty deep roster, like a lot to be excited about.
Yeah.
Walker Kessler looks like a legitimate stud. Laurie Markkinen, if last year was real, I mean, I know he went away to war during the offseason, but if
Literally.
last year was literally, if last year was real, man, you add Taylor Hendricks to that bench. I think he's like an NFL ready piece, an NBA ready piece right away. Colin Sexton, they added Taylor Horton Tucker. I think there's a lot to be excited about on this Utah team. They won 37 games last year. I'm only predicting them to win 39. I could see them just getting back to being like a 48 win team. People are like, whoa, how's this possible? It would not shock me. And also, don't be shocked if Danny Ainge makes a little bit of like a weird trade at some point. If it's like, oh, Pascal Siakam's available or like Zach LaVine's available, like I wouldn't be surprised if he cashes in a couple picks or cashes in a couple chips because they have a lot of them there in Utah from an insane Gobert trade and a pretty good Mitchell trade. So I'm going over that 35.5 number. And I think they could go way over, but I only have them at 39.
Yeah, I'm going under on this one. That I think you bring up some fair points. My biggest thing, I love Laurie Markkinen, big fan of his game, but I think there's a little bit of a regression year. I think that was a little too much from Laurie last year that I don't know if he can quite replicate that. Again, I like him as a player, but in the long run, there's no shot that he's a number one on a team in the way that he currently is, I believe. So I have them all the way down at the 14th seed. I still think there'd be Rockets 15, Jazz 14, Spurs, Trailblazers is my bottom of the table. So I don't know. I can see the Jazz a little bit. I like the long-term vision. I'm not quite as in on them this year.
Well, I'd love to make a little Trailblazers Jazz bet if we're up for that. Who's going to be better? Who's going to be better between the Trailblazers and Jazz? I love that. All right. So next is the Pelicans. I have the Pelicans at 11. Or no, I'm sorry. I have the Timberwolves at 11, 38 and 44. I don't love the depth here. Like I'm not as high on Anthony Edwards as just like a top 10 player. Like some people are willing to just like crown him there. Cat and Gobert. I just don't like the fit. Like I think Chris Finch is a dead man walking. Like I think he's absolutely going to get fired. I don't like the fit here. They only won 42 games last year. I like that under at 44.5. The West just has too many good teams. I think other teams got way better while they kind of just stayed the same. So I like the under here at 44.5.
Yeah, I'm also on the under. It's really Anthony Edwards is the only thing keeping me in on this Timberwolves team. That I'm not a Cat guy. I'm not a Gobert guy. Jaden McDaniels is pretty good as well. So I like him. But yeah, I don't love the depth either. I think they're flawed in the construction of the team. I think that the Rudy Gobert is just kind of taking away from what Edwards does best when he's able to attack the rim. So I don't like the makeup of this team. I have them down at the 11th seed for the Timberwolves. And as I said, I'm on the under.
Same here. We're both on. We both have them at 11. And then the Pelicans I have at 12 here. I have them at 37 wins. Or maybe 36 wins right there. I also have them at the same number, under 44.5. They both won 42 games last year, Pelicans and T-Wolves. You going under there?
Yeah, I'm under as well. I have them as the 8th seed, but I still think they go under. I like Brandon Ingram. I think he's still progressing, which I'm excited about. If Zion can get on the court and stay on the court, that changes a lot. This is a very theoretical team, but when all the pieces are there, I think they're a good basketball team. They got the Herb Jones, they got CJ McCollum. They have good players. We just haven't really seen it all together. So they're one of my bigger question mark teams across the entire NBA, but I have them locked in as the 8th seed.
Then I have the Spurs checking in at 13. I think you have them at 13 as well. If I heard correctly, I have them over 28.5. I have them winning 32 games, 22 wins last year. I think Wemby's worth 10 wins, and I think he's going to be the rookie of the year. And here's a little, you have Chet rookie of the year, but if Wemby's healthy, not only will he be rookie of the year, he will be the defensive player of the year. I think that's 30-1. You can go and find that out. I think he's just going to impact the way people play offense around him in such an extreme way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The reason that I'm not on the Wemby Rookie of the Year campaign is I just think the Spurs are going to handle him with such kid gloves and be careful. I think the games thing could come up, and I think the Thunder just can be a better team. That I think Chet has that going for him as well. But that's the biggest thing holding me back is if he gets like a little hamstring pull or something, they're shutting him down for as long as they need to and making sure they're taking the long view on this guy, and as they absolutely should. But yeah, he is an absolute freak. And there will be moments this year. I saw him do it against the G League Ignite last year. There will be a couple moments where he pulls off this play where a guy attacks at the basket. He prevents them from taking a layup. They kick out the three, and he still blocks the three-pointer shot. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen, and I guarantee he'll do it a couple times this season.
Yeah, he is just it defies logic how good he is. And then my favorite, maybe my favorite over under on the entire board. I think Hornets over 30.5 is probably my overall favorite. Beside the Hornets over 30.5, my favorite on the board is Rockets under 31.5. This is a terrible organization. I don't think Ime Udoka, Fred VanVleet, and Dylan Brooks are fixing that. They won 22 games. I don't think that's worth 10 wins. Udoka, VanVleet, and Brooks, especially when you have, just a bunch of morons in their organization. Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green. I just think it's a stupid organization. I have no faith in them to be anything but a bottom 2 team in this conference. So give me the under 31.5. I absolutely love the under there.
Yeah, I have them as the bottom team in the West as well. I'm intrigued by them this year. I could see there being a world where we start to see some like actual basketball played by this roster and we start to see what's real and what's not. It's been a ton of bad habits developed by these guys who essentially have had free reign to do whatever they want on the court. It clearly has not worked. Jalen Green specifically is the biggest guy that I'm talking about. I want to see what Jalen Green looks like in a structured offense and actually having responsibility. So I'm not counting this Rockets team out completely, but yeah, I have them at the bottom of the conference for sure.
And then my last one, and this is where our bet is, the Portland Trailblazers, I have winning 19 games. I have them under 28.5. I have the Jazz winning 20 more games. I have them winning more than double the games that Portland does. So that's our biggest difference. Portland versus Utah. That's a tough cover bet here between me and Sean. We'll come up with something for it. But I'm assuming you're going over there at 28.5 for Portland.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Scoot Henderson, man, he's like 20 going on 30 or 19 going on 29. Like he's so mature, he's so ready, and I think that he's ready to step up into kind of a face of the franchise role. And they still got Anthony Simons. I don't love Shaden Sharp. He's showing me less and less that I like. Jeremy Grant still somehow there and being a guy. They have pieces, I guess is my point, is that there is talent. This doesn't look like a bad basketball team to me. And I do believe in Scoot Henderson as being the guy eventually. There's going to be some growing pains this year, absolutely, but I think they're going to be competitive night in and night out, and I think they scrape their way to enough wins.
The Scoot thing is where we differ a little bit because I'm not as high on Scoot as like an NFL, or I've done that twice now, as an NBA ready-made prospect. I just don't. I think it's going to be a process. I think I get the whole. I think college does help you in that way. I know people disagree with that, but I do think he's going to come in pretty raw. And I think people are overrating Scoot a little bit. And I think there's a lot of flaws in his game, like in the way that he's not really a 3-level scorer yet. Like I think his upside is Ja Morant, who I think is a flawed basketball player, like you said. And I think there's a lot of ways that he could fall short of that Ja Morant comp. So he's not a guy I love. But we have to get out of here. But my quick awards: Jokic for MVP. It's like Ohtani for baseball. You just don't bet anyone else. He's going to stay healthy. The Nuggets are going to be good. I think it's going to almost be like a revenge to give it to him this year. Yeah, for sure. Like he's absolutely going to win. If I had to pick a value, it's SGA. Like I said earlier, I do think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander will be in the conversation. Tatum would be third on my board. But defensive player of the year and rookie of the year, I'm going Wemby. We talked about that. Most improved, I'm going Cade. And then my coach of the year, I'm going with Mark Dagnall, the OKC coach.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of you there. I'm with you on Jokic. Rookie of the year, as I said, Chet. Most improved, I'm with you with Cade Cunningham. Defensive player of the year, I'm going Marcus Smart. I think it's a Marcus Smart year that we get the revenge. You do not like Marcus Smart, do you?
No. I respect it, but I think his defensive player of the year was a sham. I think it was a farce. I think the defensive player of the year should honestly always go to a rim protector, just because I think they have more onus on them as a defender. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. in an average year, I think just has more impact than any guard. But that's entirely separate conversation. Doesn't mean they won't give it to him.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair argument for sure. Most improved, I want to give some love to Tyrese Maxey. That there's a part of me that thinks he might be too good as a bottom line here, but I think nationally, like that hasn't caught up yet. That I think this is the year he puts himself on the map nationally. So I kind of like the value there. I have not taken it yet, but I keep looking at that, thinking about that. Jordan Poole is also a name that I like in the most improved conversation. So coach of the year, I haven't thought of the coach of the year. I guess I might give I don't know who I got for coach of the year. I might even give Popovich a little love. If the Spurs do something this year, I think there's a chance that they give it to Pop this year, but I'm pretty open-minded to that still too.
All right, let's wrap it up here. Obviously, we went a little long here, so let's finish it out and just get you guys over to Fox Sports Satellite. Thank you to Nick Picone. Thank you to Sean Barnard. Thank you to everyone for listening to the Tough Cover Radio Show. Tough Cover Country, Phil's Country, Must Win Country. Let's ride.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, did you know there's a generic form